It's like, actually, not so much anymore, kind of a thing. Right, but then it's still good. It's still good. It is. So it weighs more now, but then I got rid of the bench seats, all this other stuff that, and the windows, which were glass. It looks like it changed over. So there you go. Back to the new. We just renamed this. So donating. So it's like blood donation. Let's see here. Blood donation. See, let's just go to 6 hours. P2. So make that into a video. Do, 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 do. Anyways, that works out. But yeah, no, it was like, all right, so that's fine in terms of like making that work really really well for what it's worth. It didn't take much to make that like pretty easily um, simplistic, I suppose. Yeah, it weighs like, all told, it weighs less until I put like the bed liner and all the rest of it. But I'm also making, instead of 50 horsepower, I'm making 350 horsepower, so a sevenfold increase. And I can easily get up to like 500 with 600, and that's a flip of the switch. The compressor goes from its tube into for its blow off valve, which is electronically controlled, which blows off into the intake, or there's another electronically controlled into the exhaust area. So that helps spool up the turbine for the front and wrap the blow off back into the intake, or help spool up the turbine and cool off the turbo in the rear. But instead of running it to an extraordinarily extreme degree, which make sure to make a shaft, and then I make a little housing that sits between the two. All right, and then that's a firewall. All right, so it's like I still have oil, and then I still have the lubrication, but it's like I have it elongated away from. Now it's parasitic wash, sure, but I never really mind about that because it's like, well, it's a super turbo, so it runs off of the supercharger part until it eventually turns into the turbos running it, which is fine, so long as it's at the right RPM. Then the turbo will take over, and it'll turn off the supercharger part, which is always like kind of how super turbos work. But the reason why I'm talking about it is because it's like I don't want that heat coming from that exhaust getting into my compressor area. That's all it was. So it's really what it turns into. Why? It's effectively lighter. The whole vehicle is effectively lighter because glass was quite a bit heavier than you would think. Then, even though I have bed liner and all this other stuff, it's really not as much as you would expect. The hogged out material of the engine blocks and the crankcase and all that was just fine, especially with the axles and then painting over them. That way they didn't have the possibility of rusting nearly as much. That's another bed liner, kind of coating, sort of technique. So I ended up, all told, being a solid few hundred pounds lighter than the original vehicle. Because the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold, remember the exhaust manifolds? I hogged the shit out of that out effectively. Well, yeah. right? And so it's like aluminum tubes that go in from the sides. So it's like goes off to these areas, but then it's like slightly offset, and then it's like those are just tubes that go off into the sides of an elongated one that comes in at different angles that goes off from that side over there. So it's like I need all of those to come into one singular tube that I then go and put into the turbine of the turbo, right? Well, I need that to be uh, insulated because it's right next to the firewall. So in order for that to not ultimately be a problem, then I need to insulate it. Well, it's going to make it more efficient anyways. So it's like that makes total sense to me. You know what I mean? So it's just like, right, I'm just going to shove it over to here, and then like that's going to go into a main manifold kind of connector, 2-into-1 in the rear. And like that's a bunch of insulation stuff. So stainless steel, steel sheet, right? And then it's like the coating, and then the foam, and then like box and suck out the air, and then put that all the way down into where the turbine of the turbo is. And it's like that's like a little funnel, so wider to smaller, so that way it has a faster transition into it. And then the housing was I got rid of that, and then I had it exit a little bit closer to like a full U. So it's like a little bit still angled, but it's further over, closer where the intake is, and then it's, mostly off to the side. So like it has to take more time to get out. But it's like it's not fully off to the side. It's, basically just a little higher off to the right. And it's curved, so it's a more of a ovalish kind of shape, kind of egg oval. Ah. It's separated from where the intake is to where it's not going to have that intake ultimately impact because it's sealed. So it has to go and take a longer duration until it gets out. It's higher back pressure, but more efficient. So, and I'm fine with the back pressure because I still have those little valves that I talked about, the little vacuum pressure valves. So it's like I have a vacuum and a tube that then like this is a teardrop shape to those 4-into-1, right? And then that's all I need. So it's like that's another version of like the 4-into-1. Each one of those 4 has a little valve, and so when it opens, it's like a spring, and so then the pressure pushes around it because it's teardrop shape. Then once it gets to a vacuum area and it's traveled, it's gotten rid of most of its exhaust, and then it's hot and it's blowing quite fast by it, right? So then it'll seal, and so it's a real fine game that I have to play with that one for the pressures that I do. So it's like those are, instead of a vacuum, like just straight vacuum, because it is a straight vacuum tension, but it's like it goes through, and then the only way it's actually going to go back is if the vacuum inside the tube is there. And so it'll fill up, and then it'll just be loose, and it'll come out easily. And then once the vacuum's there, then it'll suck itself back in. So 4 of those, but it's like 8 really. And then that's 4-into-1 on each side, and then it goes from 4-into-1 to 2-into-1 that goes into this, right? No. I don't really need it for the 2-into-1 area. Like that's just like angling them the right side. They go towards the rear, and then they connect a nice little like bend. So they head towards the rear of the engine, which is also kind of where I have my engine coolant coming in from the rear, because I have 2 inline 4s stuck together. So it's like that's where the rear engine coolant comes in, and then it goes off to the 2 at and then that goes 2-into-1. This is 1-into-2, that kind of thing, right? You know, yeah. All right. Now, it's a nice little thing because it's like, all I need is a to insulate that, and then it's like that's a little manifold. So it's like that's a one into a manifold tube that then separates the two. So it's equal pressure. Right. Right. But you don't need to heat up the coolant. No. Yeah, okay, so it's lower to the ground, so it's lower to the engine block, then it has to travel forward and then go up. And then it'll go from that to another rail style 2-into-1 that then gets pumped off into the radiator. Which, how'd you do that? How does an engine pump? How did you? It's because they're at the coolant, and I mean I know they have them. So I'm gonna shut up. Anyways, as a result, the exhaust can be separated by like a little firewall again. So it's like that coolant's got another insulated, and that's why the insulation of the exhaust is also there. And that's why there's a firewall there too with all that insulation. So it's like a lot of that's effectively on the inside, one side, where the cabin is, and then that's also insulated to keep out heat, make it more efficient too. But I don't need it to like do anything except for connect from the rear towards a central area, and then it curves inwards. So it's like it goes like towards together, and then it'll curve in towards one, and then it'll go down and then off to the side at an angle. So down a little and then off to an angle, which is where the turbo is. That is correct. Which is why it's off to the left and a little bit further forward, because I have a little housing tube which has the axle and the bearing and the lube and all that, you know what I mean, for the oil. That's the oil. Right, yeah, no. Right. And then I have a separator of it's basically a box with the foam again for heat from the turbine, for the heat to not get into the turbo compressor part, right? Okay. And that makes it easier to mount. So like that's the housing. So it's like there's a tube, and then I just place in a box on the tube, and I clamp it, and it's just the foam, and then the paint, and then a little bit of vacuum, and it sucks it out, and then it's like that goes directly to the catalytic converter. Simple stuff, makes sense to most people, right? Right, and it's like that means I can shove it over because of where the exhaust comes out a little further, and then I can angle it a little bit more for the where the intake is, and so I can tuck it a little bit more into that corner, and then separate it with like a little box. This is what I did. So it's like that's just a little plate that I bent, and then bolted. That's all it was. Kind of protect it from the elements too. And then it's like that intake again. It's like that little, where the little bumper is. Well, just above where the bumper is, and just off to the sides, or like that little curve is as it goes off. For the wheels. It's like if I suck in air there, then like I can combine that with my little 3D printed. So it's like that's just a bunch of like little parts that latch onto each other, and then I bolt them with a little bit of sealant, silicone caulking kind of thing. Anyways, I then place some epoxy around where the sealant is, so that way I can then like paint it so it looks really nice. And then it goes into a big, wide, massive air intake. So like this air intake is larger than the intake of the turbine, of the compressor for the turbo, right? but that's a velocity stack. So it's like that's a little curve into the, so it's like a flared out kind of thing without the mushroom thing, right? And it's got these little holes that go off into the kind of bifurcation area, right? So it's like that's a little velocity stack that goes inwards a little towards where the actual diameter of the intake is, and then there's these little holes on the inside curve that go off to where those little bifurcating part of the turbo is, right? But you just said, yeah, but like they're angled. Okay, so like they're teardrop kind of angled. So they start wider and then they taper to a point and then but they're angled and then it's wider here and then it gets to a thinner spot over there to where it actually hits like kind of where the first part of the bifurcation is. It makes it more efficient. So they're angled inwards towards the direction of travel of where that movement of rotation is for the compressor, and then because of the little velocity stack, and then I put like a little velocity stack on, which is just, again, it's just aluminum that I rolled and then tack welded and then brazed together and then rolled like the edges to fit over that little intake thing, and then I clamp it over that, and then that allows for me to clamp like a store-bought, big sucker. This comes from like a diesel intake, massive behemoth round, with like the little front part of the cone is also another version of an intake filter, right? And so like that'll suck it in to which is another velocity stack, to the velocity stack that matches it pretty well, but that there's like only so much I can do there, right? So it's a ram air into a compressor, right? So it gets it more efficient at being able to suck in more air, which is kind of what it's all supposed to do, But then the housing had to be changed slightly to where I have like a little pocket gap just behind where the blades are going to go to. So it's like, there's the spinning disc part. So like there's a little gap there that exists that has like, where the blades are. Again, I keep telling people about this, but it's like, I don't think people really understand what that means. So it's like, that's like a bearing, but it's like, oh, that little gap of air isn't really for a bearing, so it'll go around a little bit and then it'll create a constant pressure that resists to the housing as there's these little gaps, these little indents, so think little channels that are traveling in the same direction, or like stators effectively. And so like they have to be traveling in the direction of the air blades for the compressor. And so what it'll do is it'll curve it in and then it'll spin and rotate. But then once it opens to the exhaust part of the compressor, which like, this is bigger, then that goes to a smaller area, right? Well, I maintain that tube as being more or less the same size, all the way up until the point where it's going into each individual port. And so that port has a given diameter, volume, so that you do pi r squared, right, for that. So it's like you add all pi r squares, or multiply them by that number, and it's like that needs to be the size of your intake manifold, right? But it's like you can't actually do that, because if you want it to be very efficient at getting all of that air to all pi r squared, you need to have it travel very fast, and you need to have it be very much nearly the same amount. Okay, so you only want it to open up at that very first start of an intake, at the very start of the change. So it's like that tube that I talked about that widens and everything goes back to the same size diameter of that compressor size diameter exhaust area. And then this size diameter gets changed into a smaller diameter, okay, but then I need it to go into a longer duration of travel. So I want it to get from a wider and to a slow taper, and then I have individual air channels for each of the 8. Yeah, each of the 8 with a one-way valve towards a center manifold. So like there's a tube inside of this tube, and all of them have like the only one way valve like kind of set up into that, which then goes into the firing order. So it's like that's why I 3D printed this. Okay. Which they're all just teardrop shapes, yeah. So it's like that goes into a smaller tube, but it's like that means because it tapers, they're all kind of equal length-ish, within about a 1/16 of an inch of the same length. So the firing order all comes from that one main area, which is like kind of the new intake manifold after the water to air exchanger. Then I clamp all of that on the outside, and then also on the inside has its own version of like a bolt. So it's like if I want to clamp it, then it has to clamp to that bolt pattern. So it sticks itself kind of like the valve covers. So it's like plastic and then 2 aluminum sheets, right? Same thing for this. So if I want to have those valves work, then I have the next time that the firing order goes, it only has this air to go into it, and it's timed such that it'll have this pressure wave go off into each firing order that's for the next one in line. And then when it gets to the end, it then wraps to the front kind of thing. So like constantly recirculates. Yeah, it has to spin to hook over, so it's like it'll curve in, it'll curve in, it'll curve in, curve in. So think like weaving, like when you used to use weaving for lanyards. Think of a similar setup. It's another version of hooked up to the timing of the camshaft. So those valves open thanks to the timing of the camshaft. So when it opens, it happens to also push on a little diaphragm for hydraulic fluid. The fluid then moves over and opens that up, and then the spring sucks it back up, so it closes itself back. So think opposite of that. So it's like when it's open, it's then opening up this valve from this area, and then this spring closes it back. So the intake over here opens up also this valve over there, and that allows for all the valves to circulate based upon intake timing for the valves. And then it closes based upon the spring. The spring rate's a little higher, so that's something I had to get. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. Because the spring rate's I also have a spring rate on the valves. So it's I only need a slightly higher spring rate because I need to get up to a much higher RPM. And then the valves also have their own spring that it resists against, kind of thing. That's really cool. Thanks, man. I mean, I have to cool the. So you remember that water? So it has to go through the little valve cover areas for the intake manifold so it has to exchange with that hydraulic fluid and cool that. But also I have coolant flow through for the engine, but I just don't want it to be very hot. So that's effectively what I'm doing on that one. So that's all that really turned into for the intake. There's no way. You are super conservative on that fucking 350, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah, no, I am. Yeah. I honestly am. I can do scavenging if I want it. I don't do that, by the way. Oh, well, until I'm at the right RPM, but then technically I do from low RPM. I do a little bit of scavenge. I just time the, because I have variable valve lift, variable valve timing, and variable valve duration. I have all three because it's like, well, I need to move the camshaft anyways, and then it turns into like, well, I'll put a bucket here that I can slide back and forward depending on like the RPM of the engine, and that's the belt, like the camshaft timer, for that, right? So based upon that spinning, that'll open up and pull this or let it go back, right? And so like that slides the kind of like a rocker arm that'll slide the bucket a little over. Well, so it's like I have a bucket, right? But then I have a shim, so it's like a bucket shim, and so like that'll slide that over, and so it'll actually slot in a little bit, and it won't hit it normally, but then it's sliding over the bucket, but then it's now going to engage sooner, but then it's also going to have a longer duration, which is kind of what you want when you're at higher RPM. And then like variable valve timing is just a similar kind of thing, where as it was opening up, moving this like a rocker arm, it also happens to move the camshaft slightly down. So like we're talking up to its maximum lift here. So it's like if it has to move this also has to kind of move down a little bit, but it's it's spring tension, so it'll go back. All of it's spring tension. So as it, yeah, like train, valves, as it'll rotate and then it'll have this, weight, and then it'll open it up and open the valve more. That's how it changed its pressure inside of the steam engine of trains. Similar concept, but with air pressure as it rotates and changes its gear. As air pressure goes there. Yeah. Well, it's gearing more than anything. Yeah. It's like as it changes gear, it also changes geometric angle. So it's like a little bit further this way, but then it's the same gear match because this also moved for the camshaft. Yeah. So more lift, more duration, and better timing. So I have a little bit of scavenge on the low end, and then it's like I have a little bit more scavenge, but it's not much. It's really just more lift and duration that I'm getting. That kind of thing. Especially since most of the scavenge is in the exhaust, so the exhaust is what really, like, a little bit more duration, so it's like it's fine-tuned, that kind of thing. Must sound nice. It sounds really good. You like your own engine sound? Oh yeah, no, I'm the one that put it together. So I do like it. That's seeing some aluminum. That's the right, like, same kind of aluminum I'm drilling and tapping. Right. Well, it's CNC already, so it's just tapping it, and then as a result, I can just bolt on new parts in the right area. Right, for the camshaft placement, and for having longer, because it's already got like that area for it to hold that shaft and everything. So it's like it weighs a little more, but then it's like, yeah, but it's worth it because I get way more efficiency for my timing for air intake and exhaust, and I have port injection, and then it's just coil packs for a properly gapped spark plug. I have 3 spark plugs actually. 3? Yeah, they're in a line. Yeah, so I was like, well, if I'm gonna do all this, so I might as well fucking just put 3 fucking spark plugs, and then like I was like, well, 2 of them are like the spray part, so it's like they spray outwards on a jet, and then one's just already in there, so it's like it goes into a little chamber, and then it blasts it out, and then it goes and fires out jets as it fire, and then that one will join in with the jet from the center one as it'll help pressurize that. And then they're timed to do it the same amount of time, but it's going to take a little longer. So the whole thing. Anyways, it means that they spray downwards and then at a 45-degree angle, diagonal kind of thing, versus the one that's then spreading in the middle. So it's like really fast burn, very complete burn at very high RPM. Which is why I have up to 15,000 RPM. Yeah, but that means I'm fuel limited and air limited. Like, if you want to know, I can easily get way higher. I'm able to do 1,000 horsepower off this little 2.4 liter. You know, the crankshaft will do it because it's forged steel and it's balanced, which is fine. It's just like forged hardened steel, yeah. But it's for 2.4 liter inline four. I just had to alter it a little bit, and then I knife edged the counterweights just a little bit, and I divoted it just a little bit towards like certain areas, so that it'll curve. So think like it's gonna dip in, but then it's gonna trail off. So like teardrop, like divot in that goes off to the tip, and then it's got this little wing, waveguide kind of thing. So that way it reduces parasitic loss. Yeah, yeah. It's a dry sum too. Right, no, I remember that, yeah. It's quite balanced. Yeah. Oh, it's four wristbands. Four double wristbands. And then one of the banks is in the front. It's a potato. So it's like they're thinner connecting rods, but they're forged. I use steel for what it's worth. Other people use aluminum. That'll be fine. If I'm being honest, it'll be fine. It's just I also made like a grab for so I made a couple of holes through the piston heads that I already had, which were a hyper-eutectic piston head, and then I made some holes. I drilled some holes, and then I melted some steel. So yeah, and it's aluminum, a sheet steel, hardenable sheet steel. So I melted it a little bit and then beat it into place. But like aluminum will melt well before, right? So it's like I had to like forge this with like a little hydraulic press. I stuck it together with like a clamping like behind it, kind of like I'm riveting another sheet steel, that's hardenable, and I squished it in, and then that means it's a little thinner, but I had to squeeze it at the ends for the steel to like form around the aluminum and weld. I wanted to weld. So it's like I forged hardened and then quenched it, and then I welded it, and then I had to temper it, and then I had to fatigue it. So it's like I had to go through a fatiguing cycle. Now it's like a 1/16 of an inch, then it's like an 1/8 of an inch at most for those little holes that I forged welded together by doing that. No, I used induction heating because eddy currents are really decent for some of that. So like, but I have to preheat the sheet steel in a vacuum. So I have a vacuum thing, and then I have this little hydraulic press. It's all inside of a vacuum chamber, but it's really small. Remember, these are piston heads for a 1.2 liter cylinder, right? Yeah. So like they're really kind of small. I just kind of knocked them out, each one of them, and then it's like I have to temper them in an argon bath oven. Then I have an argon nitrogen. So and I'm trying to pressurize it to make it become nitrited, and then I have to fatigue limit it, which is like I have to run it through a bunch of cycles of constant like stress, so pressure and hits and heat and so on. And eventually I got to the point where it's like, yeah, that should be fatigue limit, because it wasn't deforming or doing anything. Got it to shape, so I didn't tell them any of this, but it's like, this is mine. You could do this, but this is what I did. Anyways, because I have like the hardened steel, like where the wrist pin is, you know, right? So it's like, that's another version of like why this became really really hard. So it's like, it's nitrated, but it's like I have to get a salt bath effectively. I use sand for what it's worth, because it's easier to fucking find sand. So instead of salt, like, sand is really pretty fucking easy to find. Yeah, but it's like I nitrated it. It turns out that process isn't super difficult. It's a electricity with high temperature nitrogen, while it's also at a fairly high temperature under a decent pressure, and then it's like, then it'll nitrate itself, and then you cool it off in a uh, no oxygen environment in sand, slowly over time. And then it's like, all right, then I got it to the right sizing. I made sure it was a little over what I needed, and then I was able to get it to be, the right, thickness for bore, and then I just got it smoothed down, a little roughed up in certain areas for the top, the piston top, which is a little more. It's a good way to put that. Yeah, it's more of like a dome, but it's like a curved in dome, kind of like the scramjet, the SR-72. So it's like a slight bullet nose, but it's not much. And then it's like got little divots that go from that like nose point off into where the dish is, right? But then they're curved together with that, and it's a very subtle little like thing. And then that same thing with that little dish. Like, that little dish is it's there, but it's not a lot. And then same thing with like the ends of like where the bore is. There's little divots there, like little wave guides, so they'll roll round stuff. Everything has to be round. That makes it a lot stronger as a result. And then it's just like a really hard coating. So I found out how to make diamond like carbon, which is not terribly insanely difficult. So there was like that, and then it was, well, if I press it while it's forming its diamond like carbon, and shock it the right way, and press it in like it's just a little. You don't need much, right? It'll then create a polycrystalline. And so I did the same kind of thing I was trying to do a sleeve, if I was being honest. I wanted a sleeve so bad, but I got hardened steel sheet, and then, I made a sleeve out of that, because I cut a groove in for along the length of the cylinder walls, and then same thing with the sheet, and I was able to get it to be hardened, and then I was able to like press in while I was forming that sleeve, that diamond like carbon on the inside diameter of it. So then I dropped it in as a sleeve, got it to be bolted in, with a little gasket underneath, you know, pretty simple stuff, or I had to kind of grind a little bit in a certain area, and then when I bolt it in, it like then seals really well to the engine block. It's a very thin fucking sheet. Yeah, like, it was really kind of annoying to do it, because I have to make it sit flush as well to make this work, and I have to have it pretty wide with that washer to make that work too. So that way it like really makes certain all the places are effectively as covered as I can. Right, yeah. Same thing for the top and the bottom. So it has to go at the top, and then it has to go at the bottom. The bottom is another version of like, oh yeah, no, I have to bend this fucking shit over here. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, but it's tempered. But then it's like we weakened it specifically. So like we cut in a certain area, and then we weaken it so that way it's able to be bent there. And then like that's when we bolt that in, and then it's just ball peen hammer that, and then that works out. So that way it's like not gonna go up, it's not gonna go down. But it's a really thin fucking sheet of metal with diamond like carbon, polycrystalline diamond like carbon. So it's like when we press it and we so we're making the diamond like carbon, right? As we place it onto the hardened steel, like it'll try and, this is why we use it, because it'll actually try and join in with that steel, because it's got carbon, but there's only so much it can do on that. So a little bit will form in, but then if you like compress it on both sides and then you use like an electric shock kind of thing, it'll form a polycrystalline structure. So it'll go from a larger bore to a smaller bore, and then like that's when you know it's gotten and turned into a polycrystalline diamond-like carbon structure. It's very hard, very conductive material, like a thermally conductive, and it's a fairly thin little fucking sheet. Like we're talking a 1/16 of an inch of hardened steel here. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, no, I mean it worked out to where it worked just fine. It's sliding into the aluminum, right? Like that was fine. I had to basically bore it out a little bit, but I just needed to get it close enough to where it would seal with this, and that's like a little bit of brazing. So it's like I got some aluminum brazing kind of stuff, but not much. Like really, I just slide it in truthfully. But it's like if I heat it up while I'm doing that, it'll roll this brazing out, and like you did a good job when like as you slide it forward, a little bit will come out and drip out, and it'll seal all the edges with this aluminum, and then like you like tap this, like bend it a little bit, and then you have to, because it's kind of cutting into that steel, and you already weakened it, so it's like you gotta tap it with a ball peen hammer, and then that'll bend them together, and then you can kind of weld that with a little bit of like steel brazing, which they do actually have. Surprised by that. It's oxyacetylene, and then it's like a hardenable steel like rod, that you'd use for welding. Kind of the same thing, basically. It's all it is. And then it's like, kind of gotta sand it down a little bit, make sure that it's not gonna be having any of that rust or anything, right? But that's it. Works out just fine. Yeah, you oil it afterwards, and you're good to go. Yeah. you know. Uh, that's what I did for sleeves. So it's like that's how I made a thinner, smaller piston head. That was originally like this big fat chunkster of a piston head that then like has a hardened fatigue limit piston head that has like a way stronger power to weight ratio than normal, and it's smaller, thinner, lighter. Truthfully, I mean it's basically the same weight as the whole full one when it was that chunkster, because like aluminum does squeeze out and then it seals in, right? And so it's like that wasn't too hard to do. I could theoretically get away with if I was able to, because I tried to. For what it's worth, I tried to melt out the aluminum, but like it's kind of hard to not have that ruin the temper and the hardening and the forging that I did. So I was like, no, I'm just gonna leave it alone. It's good enough. Like for what it's worth, it's good enough. I don't have to fucking worry at all about it. But it's like these little heads were amazing as a way to like force in like the burn to then create like this nice little vortex kind of situation and spread out and diffuse. that like kind of like a torque converter, so it'll go downwards and it'll come back up and then it'll rotate like that, and eventually it'll just sort of settle back as it goes back down to its bottom dead center, right? Right. Now it's a longer stroke length, so each one of these aluminum blocks are a longer stroke length to bore ratio. Yeah, 1.2, it's a inch difference, longer stroke length. That's also like, so I have a double wrist pin for four of them, and a different connecting length rod for those as well, so that way it's perfectly balanced with the flatter V angle I have. So it's like stupendously balanced. I keep telling people this, but they never really believe me that it's that balanced. Like, it's really ridiculously balanced as a result. Now, if I use two of them, sure, but it's like I have an offset, except I never do. Because of that double wrist pin, I'm able to make an offset for both of them that acts like a direct in line for each one of them. That then has an offset for when it moves. And so during that, from its top dead center over, it doesn't rapidly go down as much at all. And so I get a much, so instead of, it goes like that, so it's like take your hand and then drop it down a little fast, then it slowly goes down, right? Instead it goes slow, okay, like, so that, take that first boosh and then like divide it like two, so it's like, right, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's effectively what it does. It's a nice longer stroke length, which is good, and then I was also able to tuck in that crankshaft, and I had a girdle, so it's like, this is a 1/2 inch hardened steel girdle that I had to bend, and then that conjoins the two, so I stud bolt them in, right, the engine blocks, so two of them, then they go to the crankshaft, because I've already talked about that, right? Right, yeah, and the crankcase, it seals from top, and it seals to the bottom. Totally works just fine. Same thing with the little manifold that you talked about for the coolant and everything. Oh yeah, no, it works just fine. I'm very well aware of that. Yeah, that one doesn't have an issue at all. In fact, I don't have any issues, like, at all with this. Like, remember the little girdle? Like, I have to put in the seal for that. Like, that was the main thing, for the joining the two of them for the crankshaft. So it's like that girdle is what holds the crankshaft seal, which is fine. Then it's just lining up bolt patterns for like another little steel thing for your transmission kind of thing. Just line them up. Yeah, no, that's all it is. Yeah, it's aluminum in this instance that I used with a little gasket. So it's like a little divot, goes a long way for like the aluminum on one side and the other side, and so then it'll just bolt in, and then it'll sit flush, and then it'll seal really well. So I have a flywheel, and then I have a clutch, standard clutch flywheel setup. I could just get off the truck effectively, although I didn't use the truck. No, but I have remember that sports car? Yeah, yeah, I know. Well, like, they didn't let me get the transmission or anything. They let me get that like radiator, but they let me get the clutch because it was practically broken anyways, and the flywheel. So like, okay, flywheel, sure, whatever. The engine's mangled, right? It was like, yeah, you can, all that, and I'm like, I can shave that down and get it flat. I can, like, that was a big honkster of an engine. I can fucking I can flatten this down, and I can, like, shave it down a little bit for that diameter, and it's like I got my perfect flywheel. It's just fine. And then the clutch was, like, essentially good to go, except springs had broken and other things like that. And so I was able to, like, just get new springs and then slightly bend some of it. By slightly bent, I mean I just popped out some of the bent ones, and then it's like I put in new ones. Like the housing was good, all that for the clutch, but then it's like Everything just needed to be a slight replaced kind of thing, and that's all it was. Right, the pads were good. All the rest, like I just replaced a couple of things. That's all it was. You know, and it worked just fine. I carved into the housing of the transmission. The transmission we already know about, like that being a high load. It's like, well, that fucking transmission fits in my original four, speed transmission that it came with. But it's like, yeah, except that it's also like fucking heavy. It's a cast iron fucking thing. So it's like, well, I already have this housing. So if I make a mold out of sand and then I heat up aluminum, then I make it out of this, and then I'm gonna like hog some of that with that diamond pattern, inside outside kind of thing. Then it's like, oh, it's a real thin, stiff aluminum that I then place like the sheet steel around it after I hardened it on the inside and outside. It's like, why? Because, well, I'm making the gears, so the high to low gears. So it's like high gears mixed with a couple of low gears give me like a 8-speed transmission. And so I just made like the little, gear linkage to do 8 speeds with a reverse. Alright? So like that was able to fit in there, which would like all those high gears were changed into being that differential stuff that I talked about for locking and whatnot. So it's like I was able to get really nice gear ratios for my all-wheel drive that I have, but I'm able to carve out those gears because I don't need them to be that thick. They're not going to handle. They're not going to need to handle like stupendous torque values, right? So it was like, oh, remember that whole like, diamond shape thing, and then carving, and then all that. Basically, another version of that, where I was able to hog out a lot of its structure, but still retain its strength and rigidity. And so it's like, oh, I'm gonna make it a lot lighter. Like everything got light in that way. Everything, like even the axle turned into another version of something similar to that. Or is this like, well, I know, but actually, if you do like this type of pattern, it's now structurally stronger, especially internally and outside. So it's like, if I go through like this type of rifling style, it creates this pattern, and if I have an external pattern maker that I'll grind into it over time, and then I take it to a balancing shop, which that one was pretty easy to do myself, but I was like, just in case. Just in case, and then I got to them, and they're like, this is pretty darn balanced. You did this yourself? Yeah. And then the inside and the outside of several axles were pretty much, done the same way. I just had to weld them, which was a bit of a fucking kind of shitty thing to have to do, but then it was done once it was done, so that wasn't too hard. Same thing with like, so instead of having a transfer box, like it was a locking limited slip differential. So it's like a limited slip, but a limited slip both sides, and then it would, yeah, I know, right? But then it could lock, and it can torque vector as a result, based upon where I, with a hydraulic ram, wanted it to slip more for the front versus the rear. And then that's another version of that like little torque thing that I talked about with the hydraulic ram. Well, instead that's a torque converter for slips off to this side, but actually instead of slipping off to that side, it slips off to both sides or one or the other, depending on what's going on for how it needs to apply traction. And then it can also lock. So it's like, it's able to apply slowly over time, like, because you can dump it from a really high RPM. Like, often it has a full 15K, but I never go up to 50 and limited on fuel because I have the truck injectors, right, but I also have the inline four injectors, right. I can get both of them solid to 12K, but it's like not necessary to ever do a 12K drop. Like an 8K drop is more than good enough to go from like 8K down to like about 5, but during that it'll spool up everything, and then it'll like a fluidic transmission, that kind of thing, and so it'll have already been spinning up to begin with, and then it just engages. And so, like, it'll go from 8K down to about 5 if you're really trying to just just drop it, like, just let the clutch go instead of, like, let it get to that. So, and that's a higher gear. Yeah, I was going to say something, but it's like, what's that gear? And it's like, it's about fourth gear. It's fourth gear. Yeah, no. I smoked a lot of people on drag strips for what it's worth. They were like, "This is a Frankenstein," like this is a little old Lada. I could see you got some suspension and whatnot, but really, realistically, there's nothing special about it. Meanwhile, me, yeah, nothing too special. Flip it on to like the high PSI. Get out spraying some ice water on the front radiator. Like, no guys, I don't know anything about what I'm doing. Fourth gear. I'm gonna fluidically transmission this fucker as it's gonna store all of it into the torque converter, and then it's gonna dump it into like a real hardcore launch control at that point, torque conversion style, limited slip, where it's locked technically, but it's going to slip such that it's going to apply even as best it can. Yeah, I have to pee, fart. Alright, so it's like, I got all that going. You think that's not going to be a big deal, right? But it's like, I had very good traction control because it's all-wheel drive. But then it's like, not just all-wheel drive, it's also traction control from the all-wheel drive limited slip at that point, which slips to the differential and can slip either to either wheel as a result of that little torque converter sort of style with the gear stuff. So that one was a real fun one after a bit, and then it turned into like, right, well, turns out, not only can I do that, so we're going to take the dog out for a walk, go potty, it's his potty time as well. It's like, turns out I can do a little bit more in terms of torque. So it's like my transmission and my crankshaft aren't going to need to experience a lot of torque, but it'll dump the entirety of its like 8K RPM, that 3K drop, right? And the proceeding able to ramp up the torque as it's continuing in RPM to its speed from fork, like a CVT, yeah. It's kind of like that. So like turns it into a fucking freakishly long gear. Like any one of them, if I do it like that, that'll just eat, anything. Like at first, I weigh a couple 100 pounds less than the original, and I have a bigger engine that, well, once you add in all the rest of it, it weighs more. But then it's like, yeah, but barely. It's like 20 pounds more. Then the transmission is like, oh, it's a transmission, right? And it's like, this transmission is about 100 pounds less. But it's like, I have the axles, and the axles were like, oh, remember they're straight, hard, big drum brake, all that. So my axles and my suspension and everything, guess what? That ended up weighing about 200 pounds less. 200 pounds less indeed. But then it's like, right, I keep adding all this other stuff for downforce and whatnot. And it's like, they think that it's not, it's a little upgraded, right? It doesn't sound like it's very upgraded. It doesn't sound at all like it's what it is. Because I have a big, huge muffler on this fucker from a truck. It's got a high flow resonator because it's from like a diesel or whatever. And then it has like the big muffler, right? But it's like, yeah, except it's, it's only a 2.4 liter. That's why it says 2.4 liter. I made it's just a 2.4 liter V8, like it's an old one, it's a whole thing. I don't know where I got it, really. That old thing? Yeah. You got a 2.4 liter, man. Meanwhile, I've had a blast with it because it's gonna fucking dump at an 8K. Which it's like, that's more of a. But, of course I can't really do the baritone of the sound like a big old fuck. It's just a longer stroke too, right? And it's a potato, but then it's like it's a cross plane from the old days, balanced that way, right? But anyways, doesn't matter. Point is, it's ridiculously powerful for what it's worth. Like fourth gear is like, for a quarter mile, I technically speaking can get all the way up to that like 12,000 just fine. Like I should really truthfully start doing I have engine management anyways to try and up fuel pressure and advance the timing for tuning, right, for the ECU, right? Yeah, and so it also happens to go for so you're like basically I'm trying to get the max out of that. It's really 12K is going to maintain a torque, but it drops off significantly once it gets to that point. So, and I'm really kind of fuel limited more than anything. If I could get more fuel, I could get to that 15. But it's like, it's going to go up to 12, but it's like really realistically it's like 13. It's like 12.7 to 13. And so it's going to try and push it a little harder than it's supposed to because it knows it's leaning out. And so it's going to ramp up the fuel pressure by spinning up the fuel pump a little harder at that moment. And then it'll do that for about 5 minutes. And then it'll turn it off because it can't run the fuel pump for much longer than that to do that. Programming, yeah. It's got alternator. It's got double alternator. Now it's like, why do you have double alternator? It looks nicer. It's like, I also know why too, because you need a bunch of coil packs for your three spark plugs per cylinder in a fucking 1.3 to 1.2 liter inline 4. Oh, it's bored. No. Well, no. I kept it as a 1.2 liter. I bored it out, yes, but it's like I have the sleeve in there, and then I have like the polycrystalline diamond like carbon, skirt, and then inside of the sleeve, which has been nitrated, by the way. I forgot to mention that, but I did nitrate that. Same thing with the piston heads and the connecting rods. In my own little design, and I pre-fatiguely limited that and hardened steel and all the rest of it for the wrist pins, because I was like, no, they're good, but I'm gonna do this, a little bit harder, and I'm gonna like kind of carve out some of the areas to make them lighter weight. I did eventually go back to the balancing shop, the machine shop, to balance it again, because I had to after I started playing around with the knife edge thing. Yeah, with the weights and everything. So it was just like, so let's try and balance this a little more again. It's like comes back. It's like it's pretty much fully balanced still. Like I kind of had to add just a little here, and it's like so 15K, huh? It's more like 25 is just fine, truthfully. Like you could probably get to like 28, really. Yeah, okay. I never did. No, it's really hard to get spring rates for fucking 28,000 RPM. It's not super easy to make a 28K RPM engine, or even 25. Yeah, and then I'm already fuel limited once I get to 12 anyways. I wasn't willing to like get a larger, injector system. So I'd have to get 3 of them then at that point. It's just like, no, I like this as a drivability for an engine that's just fine, putt-putting around at like 350 horsepower. I've got like 300 foot-pounds of torque. Like this is a tiny little thing. It's fine, going around town, and it's a really easily drivable, car, and I don't really have to worry about it. So it's just like, whatever, But clearly, the standard of parents, it's more of a box for, the water cooling area that's vertical. So it's a box on the inside, and then I rounded it to make it more aesthetically pleasing with like the insulation stuff. So like the air will go around the sides for the water cooling area, but then like it's going to go and be sealed to the next one ahead. So it'll race around for that pressure, but then it'll go to another one ahead, right? But then that's also going to go up to that one too. Anyways, it allows for it to flow through with less restriction. There's a lot less fin density, and then it goes back to the same side. You already heard about all that, so right. It's a ridiculous fucking engine. Like, this is a stupid engine. You do realize, like, that would be, like, world-leading class fucking ridiculous bullshit for, like, a fucking Formula One team to do, right? It's not, though. It's not as light as them. It's a fucking heavy piece of shit compared to theirs. Meanwhile, I'm like, okay, so they want me to apparently add fuel injectors and stuff. I'll pay for it. I'm like, okay, fine. They're not even kidding. I added the fuel. I got a big old fucking fuel injector now. It's for what it's worth. It makes it easier for certain RPMs, drivability wise. But I kept all of them. Wait, really? Yeah, no, I'm adding the third and final fuel injector. These are big fuckers too. I got all the way up to my 25K as my engine speed. RPM, right? Really? Yeah. So it's like, it's E10 still E10 gas, but it's like, it's still the 9.3, right? Good stuff, right? It's cold fucking air, which I love how you did that one. Oh yeah, well, it's a huge, ridiculous, it's a radiator, for my water cooler, it's a fucking huge one. No, but I do that, actually. Yeah, how did you make subambient? I learned how to make pressure stuff work for my butt effectively. So it's like the radiator I split in half, and then I have like this, because it has the reservoir, right? So it fills up one side of the reservoir, and then that takes it over, but then it takes it to a larger tube that's technically a bunch of hollow heat sinks that go into a smaller one too. So it's like, and it goes down to the bottom one, right? Well, no. So So it's like I have two of these radiators, right? And then I had to join in with this thing. But then like this has to make it force through like a nozzle that causes it to technically see it as having traveling really fast, and then it goes to a lower pressure, and then it goes to that to another even lower pressure radiator behind it that then condenses it back into a liquid because it's technically a vapor because there's heat there, but then it's sealed kind of on the one side, but it'll add itself kind of back. It's like the hollow fins, right? Like there's a top reservoir for each one of them, right? And I was like, it only goes into that, but then that reservoir will drain in to that. So it's like it's a much thicker radiator. It looks the same size, kind of. Yeah. It's like it's a thicker radiator for sure, but it looks almost the same size. I like to think so. Yeah. But because of that pressure change, I get lower heat value than ambient because it's like a Joule-Thomson cycle. But that's also why it's like the whole shroud or the gasket seals for the radiators and all that, right? Like that's a whole thing for a reason. Like I have the whole condenser for the heat exchanger at the front, but I actually need that in between the water cooler and the radiator for the engine. That's also why I have all those gills. So there's like those gills at the on the hood at the back, and then along the side. Like there's kind of just the two really, but it's like it's good enough. Yeah, no, it's good enough. Yeah, especially since it goes off to the brakes, so it's like it'll curve in with a little, a little heat shield or a skid plate, right? That'll go off to the rear brakes and the front brakes as well, so it'll blow through that, right? Which I happen to like. I would imagine so. 25K, huh? Well, 26.2 was what I capped it at. Really? Yeah, because that's another fuel limit. So it's like 26.2 was good enough. And what's your new thing? Well, we had it at, I believe, fucking 1,200 foot-pounds of torque. Which I was surprised it was surviving that. But it's forged steel as a crank that I nitrated. Yeah. So it's like I if I'm going to do it up and they're giving me this, and it's like, well, you know what I mean? It's like, well, I'm already going to have to, so I dropped it out, I nitride it, I hardened it again, fatigue limit it after I nitride it, and then like I get it all polished, and then I'm going to get it balanced again. So it's like, I was already doing that, so they're like, here, and it's like, okay. So it's like 1,200 foot-pounds of torque, but that's at like the 18,000 RPM, and then it trails off pretty steep to about like 900. But it survives it just fine. But then I go all the way up to 2,600. I'm still getting horsepower. I'm still pushing all the way up to 26,200, and it's able to handle it just fine. My turbo is like, yeah, I'm really happy. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to add this to the fucking torque converter. It's going to be added to that. Wait. But it's not. It's more of like a torque converter coupler. Yeah, that goes to the crankshaft. Because, like, I didn't really, it's more of the clutch than anything at that point. Yeah. A transmission clutch thing, yeah. Basically, it's like the engine's good, then this just adds from the turbo any extras. So it's like, I don't want anything more from this. And it's already blowing it in so hard to the fucking intake. It's like, actually, I'm causing an overpressure situation. So let's just dump that instead. We'll just manage it by having it go into. go into the crankshaft, or transmission crankshaft area. So it's like, that was fine. That one worked just fine. That was good. Yeah, I know. Anyways, got myself cool, ridiculous. You have way more horsepower. That you are being nice. I have over 2,000 foot-pounds of torque. If I'm being really honest, it's not fuel limited at this fucking point. It can handle it just fucking fine. It's just dangerous to actually ride that. Yeah. I was like, well, you know, I'm already at like 2,800 foot-pounds here, and I'm still climbing up to that 20K. Yeah, do you want to go up to more? And I'm like, but it's going to break at some point, and I don't want to hit that at that point. It's literally like what it feels like. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I know, I don't, you know, okay, like, we're capping it at 3,200 foot-pounds, no matter what. Like, that's max, like, that material strength-wise that this fucker could really do. For how long? 24 hours before it wear out really rather significantly. Okay. Fine. Alright, fine. Whatever. Fine. So then I brute forced that fucker for a long time. Yeah, and it was like, right, well, we got the 32. Yeah, 32.21. Toned it back to 31.30, which was great. And then we were like, we're getting up to 26,000. 26,200 was always going to be the cap. Like, it is genuinely fuel limited at that point. But it's like, that's engine ignition, advancing, timing, all that stuff, and pressures. Because E10 can go pretty high pressures. So like 15 was like not what we ended up at for that. We're like in the 35 PSI range. And so we pushed it, we got 26,000 RPM with a 2,700 foot-pounds of torque. So a little horsepower calculator math on the lines there will help us out, because like that's kind of hard to fucking do right now because I'm tired. So it's like, alright, we're gonna just do the bookmarks here. Let's see here. See here, I think it was science studies? No. Just any one of them? Yeah, if only. You just search how to calculate for this damn thing by this point. I know I saved it though. I am very well aware of that. Yeah. See here, science stuff. No, I just clicked that. Google search? No. Instructions. There it is. That's what it was. So it's like 2711.2 at 26,010 is 13,426.4 horses. I don't know if that's worth it. That's again, it's like I was already in that zone of like it's perfectly fine as is. Like I don't really need more than that. It's worth. Like 300 foot-pounds of torque for a light ass, like it's a light vehicle. It is a extraordinarily light vehicle, and so I didn't really need much to really make it work. But to each their own, I guess. All right. So, blood donation, YouTube watching. And talking. Let's see. Yes, Phaser, that is indeed correct. Talking cars. Let's see, it said 10, 11, 2023. P2, and then add to playlists, and then long, whatever. It's creative ideas in there. That's true. Yeah. Alright, there we go. Anyways, I did that. That one was fun. Yeah. From a 2.4 liter. Yeah, well, I'm also really highly pressurized and effectively scavenging very hard at the end there, and then I have all the extra PSI, and then it's like anything extra from that turbo is going directly into my performance of my transmission and all that. 35 PSI fuel. There's I can't do that. Yeah, I know. But they're like, you can double pump, extra fuel in there. It's like, nope, can't do that. It's port injected. That's it. Yeah, well, some of us, not you. I know that. Oh. How'd you get this fucking figure? At a dyno, of all things. So. Well, I know. No, I know. 35 PSI. The intake manifold, do you remember that one? Yeah? I maintain a lot higher consistent pressures and flow rates for my given engine design. Then I also increase the fuel atomization as it happens to push a velocity stack like design into the ports, which the ports are also angled. So I didn't talk about this one. I should have, but I didn't. But they're not, like mine are not angled to bounce off and then into the sidewall. They're an angled valve where they go inwards onto the edge of the sidewall. So it's like, the cylinder wall, right? The inside diameter of the cylinder. So they're angled to go right next to it, like your flat of your hand is like right next to the sidewall. And then it curves inwards. And it's a big fat fucker. Yeah, but it's like, right, but it's domed. I have to carve it to slide into as a flat piece. And that's why I had to move where the camshafts are and everything. Right? So it's like, fire it in, basically. It comes in at a bit of a steeper angle, too. And it's curved in. So it's like, where the manifold is a little slightly further forward, then it curves in with the velocity stack to another velocity stack that then goes into, which that one's going to stick in slightly to the port, right? So it sticks in a little bit, and then I have a little divot thing that I talk about, and then like I bolted it with sealed. Sealant. So it's like a much smoother transition, and then it starts already curving into the sidewall. And then you remember the reason why like they're curved. Remember that? For like the little torque converter setup for my piston head, right? Well, it's domed, it's curved to help with that vortex effect of the intake. And I have a little bit of scavenging. Not much, but a little bit. Right? Which means I can force in more air, and then it closes, and then it starts vortexing a little bit more as it's going down again. And so it has a lower pressure as it vortexes inside of the cylinder, but then it goes back to going up. So it'll go down the side walls of the cylinder, and then it'll go back up a little bit, and it'll spin, and that creates a differential of pressure that keeps sucking in more and more. And then it really atomizes fuel as it's already kind of going like a constant rotating vortex, and then it compresses, so it gets faster and faster. Right, so it's like, I happen to, as I push in fuel, get a greater and greater atomization, faster and faster burn. I'm able to keep maintaining torques really high torque, and it's E10, and I can do more PSI, but it's not necessary, because after a certain point it's like, yeah, I don't really need it. I'm already able to get to 3,200 foot-pounds of torque. It's a longer stroke to begin with like this kind of double offset centered potato V8 that I've made, right? And it has a very low coefficient of drag, much lower coefficient, and then I have high compression rings, and then, because I had to change, ultimately speaking, with the piston ring and everything, so where those seat, and I can't have them like seat too far in, so like they're a smaller kind of ish piston ring, right, and they're flatter, so like they're very low weight. So the connection rod had to be a whole different type of thing than you would imagine. They had to be longer than you would think. So like I already had a much larger stroke than bore to begin with, like a 1 inch. Well, this is now like a 1.5 inch difference. Because there's less surface area on the piston skirt, there's even lower coefficient of drag. I also have 3 piston rings for compression, like normal, and then I have an oil ring too. I have a piston skirt that is only on really the 2 sides that I need it, with a slight, like, beveled in. So it's like this is like a kind of curved inward and then curved outward design. So it'll look like a W. So it'll W in, right? And then like those are regular piston skirts, but then they're going to trail off like a W as well. So this is a shorter W that's curved a little bit towards that U, and then that's another version, like the sides of piston skirts. Even lower drag. Very well balanced too. Exactly. And the whole assembly is very, very low weight comparative to what it would have been, because I carved the shit out of it and pre-fatigue limit it. Right. Effectively, the connecting rod, the wrist pin's hollow, just so you know, with rifling on the inside. That helps with structural strength. Yeah, the whole thing, same thing with the piston head. That's got like in the skirt underneath the piston head. It's much hollower. I hollow it out. It's basically like that. Yeah. It's a very, very hollow design. You keep telling us that. It weighs almost nothing. Like, you said it weighs like close to the same amount. Yeah. Yeah, no, those. Yeah. No, it is. It weighs roughly the same amount. Why would you say this? Because it does. It's also hardened steel, you know, that I pressed in, right? Okay. Explain to me why you think that weighs the same amount. When effectively it's very low in terms of actual, like, mass content. Because it's steel, and it weighs a lot more when I have to have it forge weld with, like, the little rods of connection in between. Right, yeah. Yeah. So it's like, it weighs roughly the same amount. That's an operatively key word here. What's roughly? I'm here, by the way. I know, yeah. I'm standing right here. I know you are. You're not laying down on the bed. But still, god damn it. Yeah. What is it, though? It's about 40%, roughly, the same mass as before of the original piston heads. Connecting rods are way less than the aluminum ones, and they're hardened forged steel that's been nitrated. Same thing with the wristband and the heads now. Yeah, they're all much harder. They're about 20% lighter, all told, for the connection rods, each one of them, and then the wristbands are a full 10%. More like 20, really. A little closer to 20. It's around 17. You round down. You always never... You conservative mother damn motherfucker. No, I hear it. I hear him with his cheekiness. What? It works exceedingly well. Okay, I don't see what the problem is. Yeah, are you kidding me? The fucking connecting rods are weird. They are. They're slightly offset. Wait, what? Yeah, 4 of them are offset to the wrist pin, double wrist pin offsets. Right, the double wrist pin on, which in the crankshaft is an off. It's still a regular crankshaft, by the way. No, I know, I get that. Yeah, no, I get that. But, like, still, the connecting rod, and they're oddly linked. Right. You means from top dead center, it hasn't actually fully extended. And then it goes over, and then it's fully extended. Whereas this is a double wrist pin, and then it's fully extended before that, which is a normal. With a wider being. Yeah. Potato. It's a screamer. It's a crossplane screamer. No, I know. I get it. There's a lot of tips and tricks here we didn't do. Your engine weighs 20 pounds less than the inline 4 that was originally 2.4 liter cast iron block. Yes. But it's a 2.4 liter V8. Yes, until I add in the compressor turbo and, you know, all the manifold. No, the manifolds in the intake, it'll still weigh 20 pounds lighter. You're adding the fucking radiator, aren't you? It weighs less in all aspects. What's with the weight? It means it's extraordinarily strong at all of the fucking thing, and it weighs so little. Because remember the knife edge thing? Yeah? And then he curved it off towards the direction of travel with that knife edge. So he and then so it's slightly offset for the balance. Perfect for like the weird offset connecting rods with the double wrist pin. So it's like a fully offset, perfectly in-lined cross-plane crank. That is correct, yes.
try to replicate this fucker for a while. I was like, how the fuck did you do? It weighs next to nothing comparatively. It is really strong in all the ways it needs to be strong, and all the ways it doesn't need to be strong there, it's effectively not a thing. Carving it in and right, you know, I get that, yeah. Still, I remove porosity. I have to fatigue limit it anyways. Remember the fatigue limit thing and nitrate it? Yeah. Well, that means in order to like carve it out, then I have to nitrate and fatigue limit after that. And I have to like make sure it's sort of porosity during that, which means I have to kind of shrink it a little bit and compress it. The sand's compressed. Oh, okay. Under a really high pressure. Well, I have to nitrate it. Yeah, okay. I know. I like how Alex still even joined. Like, Mr. Limke. You damn bastard. Do you understand how ridiculously non-existent these connecting rods really kind of are? Yeah. They weigh very little. They weigh less than the aluminum. Ah! My potato engine is fucking ridiculous. It has no coefficient of drag. No, it has drag. It's very little. It's extraordinarily balanced. Oh yeah, no. I place any kind of, you know, little penny on it, and it'll, or any kind of like that you can balance on the side, and it'll just be fine with that. I love how it's a dry sump that has practically no oil that comes in. Yeah, because I have oil squirters. Yeah, remember the oil rails? Remember or at least the girdle that I had, right? Well, there are oil rails in that, which I didn't talk about, but like they're there. That squirt based upon the rotation of your crankshaft. That is correct. I have for that seal, I have like these little bump kind of like, well, it's a crank, well, it's a gear, right? Okay, so then like that helps with when it opens, like valves for the oil squirter when it comes down. Instead of like constantly spraying, it only opens up the valve to spray that valve when it's down there for either side. And then there's a dry sump. Yeah, no, but no, I don't think you get it. That's a really good system. He's also got the little stupid oil, like, don't fucking go up in there thing that, like, is your teardrop shaped like a rib cage, yeah. That helps with the rail. That wicks it down, and then, like, the counterweight happens to go through, like, the little curved. Look at it. The curved rib cage, and I have to have it at the right V angle. Right. But it's a balancer. It's like it's a balancer. It's not, it's oil. You know what I mean? Like, it's rotating like oil valves, effectively. Okay, Phaser. Alright, just gonna drop it right at my feet. I know you want to play, but, like, still. Anyways, point is, that means it's connected at more than 5 places. It's connected at the seals, and then every place in between. So 1, 2, and then 3. 5 total, right? But there's more than 5 because of the ribs. The ribs are indeed a part of the connection process. Because I have 4 engine blocks, or well 4, I have 2 engine blocks, right? So I have 5 times 4. 20 places it's connected to. With 1 in between, remember? They have the in between? Right, except that has to be like a flat, kind of like the right kind of thing. Right, yeah, I know. No, I know. Yeah. This fucker's strong. It's very strong. Ridiculously strong. There are supportive structures into the V here. You didn't mention that. No. I wasn't going to. You're dead. Oh, the fucking crankshaft goes into the V. Okay, that makes a lot more sense than a little, yeah. Like, well, I have to put supportive structure somewhere. So, like, yeah, no, it makes total sense, right? To, like, just put them right there. And that's a return line for the oil pump, right? Right? Except not really. But, like, that's how I can get that little oil sump right there. Like, it's just got this, like, little sloshy, like, don't slosh, fucking, you damn bastard. Like, you know, connecting to like the crankshaft, like sort of this like girdle that goes in. It's a baffle system, you know, to like the crankcase, right? But then it's like that. It's like, well, I can just bend the fuck out of that. Like I don't need that like that. I'm just gonna hog away this part and then I'll just weld that. It's the original, just so you know. But it's like, dung, 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 and then it's like dunk 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 dunk, and then it's like no, just get it nice and flat, level. So I need it to be thinner anyways, right? So it's like I got a big wide, like almost 2 fucking inches here, you know, and I can trim that down to get it nice and flat. So it's just like, and it's like get it nice and level with the mill. It's welded and then brazed. With it's an inch, half inch, right, half inch, but it's acting like an inch because there's the fucking oil rail and then all the Yes, it is. I know. No. There's damn bastards with their stupid engines these days. Anyways, it gets effectively right next to the crankshaft for that like the oil because it has like a little oil there, you know, like in a little bath. So it still kind of needs it, but not much really, you know. So it just kind of touches it, skims through, and then like that's like for the round part, I like divoted in, and then I scooped a little part right there, and it flings it back against like where the bearings are. So it'll drain off to where the bearings and the connecting areas are for the crankshaft, but then it's like then it'll spray another one from that. You know, because it will separate. You know, like Peltier, so it goes and it tries to curve off. So like it'll grab that and then it'll curve it off to where the area. Yeah. Alright, so this is a really strong bottom end with a nitrated crankshaft that's been re-hardened and then hardened again and then tempered. So it's a nitrated, it's forged already, it's a forged crankshaft. But it's like I have to harden it and then I have to like repolish and grind all that balance stuff. Right, yeah. It's like re-hardening is a bit of a fucking shit show in a lot of ways. So it's like I learned how to use liquid nitrogen with like electricity kind of running through. So it's like I heat it up a little bit with induction and some torching, and then but that's so it's like you remember the torch. It's like, well, actually above the flame is what I'm using, and then it's in a argon nitrogen area that I'm doing that with, and then it just goes off to like a little suck in air from the outside instead, you know, little exhaust area to try and cool it so it's a little less, you know, deadly. But it's like I heat it up a little bit, right, and it's like that's heating it up and I'm pushing a little bit of electricity through it with you know, nitrogen in the area, right, and then it's like I'm gonna let it slowly cool off in a nice hot like a little fucking area. It's still colder, so and then eventually I get it back to room temperature, but it's in argon, okay, nice argon, you don't want it to oxidize, and then it goes into a liquid nitrogen bath, and then it goes through a tempering cycle, which in this instance we're doing a different type of tempering. So it's like we're going to rapidly get it back up to regular room temperature by having it go into that hot like little argon furnace, right? And then that's going to then be about half what we originally put it in at, like for temperature. And then it goes back down into the liquid nitrogen. after it has been kind of warmed as a result, after it gets to that temperature, and then it rapidly cools it again. Now, it's not super hot, okay? Like what that is, that's like 130 C or something. So, and it's like, that'll really harden it. Like, you know what I mean? Because that's what we're doing, right? And then it's like, right, so it's shrinking, and it's like, then we're going to slowly let that boil off as nitrogen, and then we're going to allow for we have really? Yeah. It's copper, but I have it in liquid nitrogen, and then I run a current through it, so I have an induction style and a liquid nitrogen bath. And so it heats it up, and then I run the nitrogen that's blowing off underneath it, so I pump it in with a fucking air pump compressor thing, and then it blows onto it, and it warms it up, but it warms it up much slower now. So it's like it rapidly kind of cooled, but then it's like we quenched it, and then it's like we're warming it back up to room temperature, and then we're going to do a tempering cycle again, because this is tempering, okay? Right, yeah. And then like we put it in that oven and get it back up to like an actual kind of near tempering cycle, and then we slowly let it come back down, and then we go actually to a tempering, and we rapidly cool it with cold argon. And then it's like done. Yeah, it's done now. Comes out looking spick and span, but like fucker is definitely hard as like really reasonably you can get, right? For rehardening as a cycle process. So there's already a forged, and then it's like rehardened, and now it's tempered. So it still has a little bit of give, but not much. We're not looking for that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But you don't want a lot of give. But you need a little bit of give on the outer, you know what I mean? Like the inside is very hard right now. But the outside, because of the way we did this, is slightly able to give. It's the opposite. Yep! Interrupter came in. It's harder on the outside, but the inside is slightly more able to give. Because we inductively heated it and all that. Yeah. So then we put it into nitrite. So it's like another version of compress and heat and all that, which kind of ruins a little bit of what we did. Okay, so just so you know, we have to do a different nitrite cycle. We already had a bunch of nitrogen anyways, and we were running electricity through it and all that, so it's like, it's slightly nitrited. It's not really though. Like it takes a little bit more to get nitrite, right? So it's like we have to do that, and then like that like quench cycle happens all over again. Yeah, no. So we do this because it's like, it's starting the process of making the inside a little bit softer, but it's still very haphazard. Like it's a very chaotic area that has not uniform-ish levels of hard and soft. Alright, so like this then nitrites, and it evens out that, crystalline structure, and then we are compressing it in a mold that makes it become nitrated, and it slowly warms it up, and then like because it's already pretty warm and we're cooling it off, I'm warming it up with the iron or the oven, right, the argon oven, and like we're going to do the whole fucking cycle again, but this time with the mold it's in is going to go help with this. So like the mold is effectively a version of like, we're going to use the mold to be able to compress it and then have a different type of thermal mass system, and we also run electricity through it, but then we also like squeeze it. Alright. Now this isn't super big. For what it's worth, it's all kind of in like this one little fucking chamber that just has multiple little arms in it that I have to run around, but it's like luckily I have a hoist and all this other shit, so it works out. But I got it all done, and it's like, yay, super nice, done, but it's a fully hardened on the outside, a decently still kind of hard middle, and then at the very core, is like softer. Okay, just what we're looking for. And then I tried to figure out a way to drill into a crossplane to be able to allow for hollowing out of the crankshaft. Figured it out. Then I had to figure out how to get like oil through that kind of stuff, and so like I figured that part out. So I get oil for the bearing journals, I get oil for the connecting area. Like everything's it's a fully hollow crank, but it's like I still have that soft area, but it's like I hollowed out the core, like the very core, and I rifled it, and then I had the ability to rifle a little bit, or like carve out some of the other areas around the crank. And then the counterweights are another version of like it's kind of slightly curved inward, like a teardrop. And it's like these little wave guys, especially with the offsets I have for the crossplane, right? Yeah. Right, I get it. No, yeah. I'm starting to see where it's like, this is a much stronger fucking crank than I thought. I was like, there's no fucking way this fucker is that fucking good. No, 32 fucking foot-pounds of 3,200 foot-pounds of torque would have died. And I'm like, nah, it's working. I get it. Brrr. Anyways, it's having a great old time getting everything oiled, and then it's got like the little flushed, but then like recessed as well area, so that way nothing's gonna try and break the damn thing. That's the scary part for me. Like I don't want it to rub against anything. So it's like that's a very fine curve, like sand thing, polished stuff. Yeah. But that's why everything is like really hogged out and just strong where it needs to be. But that means I have very low weight, very low resistance, like frictional resistance, and then I got everything ready to go. And it's like time to push more pressure, but I don't need more pressure because it's like I actually have such a stupidly high flow rate thanks to those inline poppet valves. They're right next to the cylinder wall. It curves and spins and vortexes, right? Yeah, it's like cool stuff, but it's like, yeah. Please tell them. Yeah, right. So, what it means is that I managed to effectively put more pressure into that cylinder that's closer to that full 32 psi, or 35 psi that I'm using, right? Yeah. Well, but like, yeah, I know. But it's like, right? No, but you actually got more. I got more. So what's going in there is actually closer to a 45-ish psi because of the speed of that air coming in and the vortexing therein and the scavenging effects of tenfold more psi. Yeah, but it's like really good atomization. It runs across the piston head and the cylinder sidewalls. Really high pressures. Like the blocks really wouldn't be able to support that. No, yeah. Well, that's the supportive. You remember the girdle I talked about that has the supportive area. It goes to the 2 engine blocks at the top, but then it also goes to the bottom. And so that's another version of a 1/2 inch, kind of like, but it's not really. I only need about a 1/4 inch of hardened steel to be able to make that work. Yeah. And so like it's kind of like a bunch of I-beams, or like triangle or whatever. Anyway, point is, it's like it connects that and it connects the outside as well. Kind of a similar design. So it's like, remember that this top right here, if you were looking from rear front or front rear, it's like that goes to the outside bottom of, so like take one cylinder inside, of the V is supported by the outside second engine block. So one engine block inside, second, that's how it connects itself. Okay. Oh. that has a lot. Not to mention, I'm carving them, yeah, so that way, like, the cylinder sidewall, it's already supported for one thing. They're old '90s blocks, so like that means they have a like non-open head. They're a fully closed head. That's another reason why this works so well. Yeah. But it's like that, like head and the engine block are supported by the girdle. So it doesn't want to move much at all. No. And like that, the clamp, the intake manifold, same kind of similar design. Like where it's bolted, like it has to resist in another area where it's connected, and like there's an outer to the like the valve cover, so the plastic, and then there's an inside and outside of the aluminum sheet. Right, and then like that's clamped, but then it's also still a structural part because it's connected in that bolt way. You know what I mean? It's like clamped, hose clamp, but then it's still got to have a bolt to it. Right. Which means the intake manifold is a structural member. Yep. And then I have like the two exhaust manifolds from the sides that connect in the rear, which is a structural member. Yep. It's a structural member because I have to have it connect off of like little offshoots that I had to put on to have that bolt where it is and stay there. And it bolts also to the firewall. Yeah, the firewall. Thanks, Mazer. Yeah. This fucker is basically a structural member of your vehicle. Oh yeah, I know. No, it's a stupid fucking engine. It's a. You said stupid though. Yeah, I get it. The reason why I say it is because it's like at 2,700 foot-pounds of torque and at 26,000 RPM, it's a ridiculous amount of horsepower. Exactly, for a 2.4 liter. Yeah. It's a 4-stroke, yeah. No, it's a 4-stroke, yeah. 30, it's more like 45. PSI. Large amounts of fuel. Yep. E10 too. Brrr. Oh, and then your turbine also adds to the so any extra will go straight to your crankshaft. Yep. No, you already talked about the intake manifold with is like once it gets to a vacuum, it'll actually shut. That's correct. Yep. With the valves for your manifold. Yep. Right. No, I know. I just don't want it to work that way. I know, but you need to stop doing that to us and him. Like, it clearly works. Like, I still am like surprised, if I'm being really fucking honest, because it's a V8, but it's like you have a crossplane that acts like a 1, 2, 3, 4, like, so it actually acts like, instead of a 1 and then it dips down, it's more of a constantly, always kind of flat curve where it goes down, 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 just slightly, and it goes right back up. Yep. That's a fucking stupid, ridiculous level engine. Yeah, and it's balanced. So it's like balanced from the counterweights, but then it's also kind of slightly balanced by the oil, pumps. Or the valves, right? But it's not really for that. No. Really? Yeah, no, it's a stupidly powerful engine. A little one that can fucking really riff. Yeah! It's also cooled by a massive radiator. I was like, why do you need this fucker? It's a fucking 5x4. Really? Well, it's a 6x5, really, realistically, with what I did to it, with the little, like, yeah, I know. Did to it? He has off to the sides, apparently, where the gills are, extra radiators. That's right, sure do. So that's to pump it from that and the 5x4 in the front, and then these are just 1x1s that then dump into the rear intake for the coolant flow. Yeah. Why? Well, it was working just fine with the standard 5x4, but then it's not going to work anymore. And no, they don't have fans, so it's like that will only like work off the pressure that's already going through, which, considering it's more than good enough most of the time. Like you put a fan towards it, push it, it works out. Right. The water cooling thing. Yeah, that was already there. Well, it didn't start off there, but like it slowly upgraded. Right. Yeah. This thing weighs almost nothing. Yeah. Yeah, it's supposed to. If I didn't do that, yeah. No, and remember the carving it in, and then hogging out all that intake manifold excess and so on. Yeah, I have to fucking coat all of that with high temperature. Thanks, Phaser. High temperature. Yeah, not the bedliner. No, it's the enamel ceramic silicone. Yeah, that thing. Right. And then it's boxed. Yeah, with the little the foam, and then a box around that then is also coated in it, and then I take out all the air. It still is fairly warm, right? But it's like you can touch it and you're not gonna burn. It'll keep your coffee warm though. Yeah, yeah. It's low. Yeah, oh yeah, it's a fairly wide V angle for that to work like that. Yeah. It's not a pose or side to side like a super. It's still like a V angle, but it's a because of the potato. It's an odd V angle, but then it's a perfect V angle for what it is. That's what I should say. Yeah, it's a perfect V angle, but it's wider than what you would expect, right? Especially with one bank in front of the other. Yeah, which that's the whole thing about that little be able to have it right for the other side. Yeah, so it's it's going to be slightly forward, that engine block for where the crankshaft is, right? It's going to be slightly forward, and so that has to curve around, and then that has to curve in front, and that's how I can get the serpentine belt to work at the front, and then also have the housing for my transmission. Right, which handle that. Yeah, no, but I nitrated those, and then I got the diamond-like carbon on there. Yeah, the polycrystalline diamond-like carbon. Yeah. It's lighter, and it's able to handle all of the things I needed to in terms of torque and horsepower. But he wanted me to put more fuel in. I know now why I did wrong. It's like 26,000. It's still going. He's putting more into it. It didn't even fucking flinch, guys. Breathe. Meanwhile, I'm in my 8th gear, just fucking dropping it from 26K. Let's go. Still fucking spinning wheels. I'm in fucking 4th gear. Remember when I started 4th gear? I'm spinning wheels in my 4th gear. I have a dynamic injection system for my fuel map. For at different RPMs. No, I get that now. But I still hate you, just so you know. But it's that's really good. Thanks, bro. But don't hate me. Yeah, I know. Okay, whatever. But it's beating funny cars, bro. Oh yeah, no, it should. It weighs very little. It's got a lot of mechanical grip. I got all-wheel drive. They're big old contact patch for those tires. I actually have more contact patch and more stick, and I weigh less. And I have, technically speaking, more horsepower and torque. I know, I heard that, yeah. It is launch control, which is also a fucking fuck you, effectively. Whee! I'm done. fucking big old balloon, or not balloon, parachutes come out. I do have a roll cage. I had to put a roll cage in this fucker to fucking race them, which was annoying after a while. Yeah, I don't need a roll cage. I don't. You know, but I mean, it makes it safe. Yeah, I had to get much bigger brakes. Yeah. I was fine with the brakes, but they were like, alright, so we're gonna do this. It was like, alright, you said you'd pay for it to be fucking safe. I did, yes. I didn't think it'd survive. I made bigger brakes, you know, but I made a double brake. So if you don't know, it's like, well, I can only go so big, right? So I have 2 disc brakes, and then I have 2 brake pads, 12 and 6, 9 and 3. And there are 3 pistons in the front, and there are 4 pistons in the rear. Yeah, no, well, I mean, I don't have to extend anything. That's like the best part about that one. That's the wheel hub, right? Well, the wheel hub was able to handle it, because those came off a big fucking massive... Remember the whole, like, this is a truck? I had to get the fucking whole front end and rear, you know, all that. Remember that? Yeah, I do. Yeah, so, like, that basically is the wheel hub. I just upgraded the bearings and, like, the axle, kind of, like, I was able to finally get, like a hardened, I had to nitrate harden and then diamond the inside and outside coat the fucker. Yeah. So it's like, it's a thinner, but then it's also not, because, right, that harder, lighter, faster, stronger. Yep. Different wheel hub looking thing. Oh, I was able to make that not too difficultly for what it's worth. Yeah. No, I know, I get it. It's diamond, polycrystalline diamond, like carbon. Mixed in, thanks, Phaser. Mixed in with steel. Steel dust, yeah. Yeah, no, I carved a shit ton of it out and made it all work that way. Yeah. It weighs less now. Yeah, no, it does. A little bit. It's like 5 pounds less, yeah, it's not much. Right, because I did that with the crash, the roll cage. Oh. Really? Much smaller tubing, much thinner tubing. Then I'm able to, like, cut through it in some places and then, you know, coat the whole thing, weld the whole thing. So as I did that, and it's a whole forged weld, hardened at slight temper sort of thing that's then has its air sucked out. And then, like, that's the vacuum air suspension, you know, setup that I had for tilting the vehicle a little bit, you know, side to side, front and rear, to, like, get better traction. So when it tries to load up the rear, it has, like, the pivot point acts like the whole front is actually, like, that rear pivot is actually in the front where the engine is, right, where the engine is. And then when it brakes, it's like all that towards where its pivot point, it's like where the rear is. Yeah, like where the rear axle is. Yeah. And so it brakes a hell of a lot harder. Ah! But they're smaller. Okay, so it's like, alright, Phaser fleece. So it's like I have a slightly larger disc brake on the outside, but it's yeah. So it's a slightly larger and then a slightly smaller one, and then I need to be able to have it fit in between. And so, like, they're all drilled, slotted, vented. So they drilled through, then they're, like, slotted, and then they're, like, drilled in on the sides, but they're not steel. I use my my polycrystalline diamond-like carbon. In this instance, it's both the ceramic, and steel together to bind it all. And yeah, it's the ceramic is zirconium, and you guessed it, silicon. You know, who would have thought, right? Yeah. It binds all the material together, It's effectively put in together as two plates at first, and then I heat it up and weld it together using like heat and force and pressure and all that, and it's then going through a nitration process too during that. And it's pre-fatigued with this like stress, vibration thing while it's undergoing that, and then cooling. So it, like, hardens it, then tempers it, then re-hardens it as it fatigue limits it. So it's as hard as it can get under a fatigue limit. That's cool. You just describe the process. It's a machine I had to build. It wasn't too hard though. It's a couple of hydraulic rams and like, like a spinning disc thing that just like hit it at the right RPM. Yeah, with like shocky, current stuff. Right, yes. With the nitrogen and pressure and so on. Anyways, point is, it doesn't really matter. That part was fun. Like the brake pads are another version of the same thing. Like, which you don't really totally want. You want them to grip. So it's like, instead of polycrystalline diamond-like carbon, I was using boron, silicon, aluminum, and a type of ceramic that's like fucking it's not zirconium. It's like a calcium and fucking, I think magnesium was what it was, with a nitrogen and oxygen. A nitric oxide. So we had nitric oxide, NOO specifically. So it's an oxide, but it's like, it's an oxidizer, right? But it's like when it breaks down with the way we're forming the brake pad, it then breaks the oxygen, oxidizes, creates exothermic, but then that combines with the right current and pressure together with our other compounds that I just mentioned, that then creates a brake pad. It's really resilient to heat and breaking and fraying away. Breaking and okay, Phaser, I get it, yes. Breaking and fraying away, but then it's also like, okay, so I had to recess all those drill marks and all that, which we already know about, but the whole thing. Anyways, right. Okay, so I want to be real fucking super just quick about it. It makes like a bunch of little contact patches, right? But I have to have lines that go through them to allow for heat transfer. So it's like they're effectively like vertical lines. Vertical lines that travel with a diagonal line that also helps take any ablated away material out, and then that captures it into like the caliper area, that then deposits it into a little catch can. You just unscrew and then put another one in. It works out that way. Anyways, right. Yeah, so like they're carved pretty far in, for both of them. Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. Anyways, that's a really large amount of brake. Why? Oh, because I can do it. I can brake that hard with this tiny little vehicle that has a ridiculous amount of torque and horsepower. I mean it. Like, I have to get rid of all. It heats it, right? Really hot. It's really good and resistant against that heat, right? Yeah. And so it won't melt. It will blade away a little bit, but it'll remain as its structural form, and it won't move much as a ceramic. Like both ceramic and ceramic, like they're very good at gripping from a low temperature to very high temperature, and it takes a really long time for it to actually start like causing any sort of ablation like type of problem. Like Formula One has like the carbon, right? Well, the reason why they have ablation problems is because they get cracking that has oxygen and nitrogen get in, and then it expands and compresses again as it cools. And so the oxygen actually forms carbon dioxide that creates more pressure, and then it'll expand further more rapidly the next time. This doesn't do that, so I'm able to actually handle higher temperatures for a longer period of time with less ablation, and then I'm lighter, kind of, like, kind of. It's very kind of. Like, if I were to take the entire diameter of these two things, because of the thinness of this brake disc and the brake pads, like, it would be lighter. Now, I also have a phase change for the hydraulic fluid. So, like, the hydraulic fluid, if it happens with a little reservoir, so I have an extra reservoir. That's right, an extra reservoir of fluid. When the calipers happen to get this bubbling heat, it goes into the reservoir area through lines that are larger and try and cool them off. It's lower than where the brake lines are, though, and then it goes into a pump that puts it back into the reservoir above. That's how I got around the overheating of the caliper brake pad hydraulic piston area. I just simply allowed for it to have a valve that would be a one-way valve, and it would boil away anyways, but it would drain in more pressure to equalize it at the correct pressure at the brake pressure, right? And like, that's a pressurized cylinder at the top that has a vacuum in the center, which is how it has the pressure, right? And like, that's the pump. So it's like, this is a vacuum area for the cylinder, for the reservoir when it goes in, and it's supposed to cool off and condense in there. And then it'll suck itself back in to the vacuum that's in between, which then, once it gets to a condensed state, because it's all one-way valves, so it goes over to this, and then like, that's going to condense, and then this pressure diaphragm goes back, and then it drains off as a one-way valve into the reservoir, which is kind of its only real need for a pump, right? But then it's like, right, but I still have a pump. I do, yeah, I have an electric pump. Yeah, so it'll still pump it in. It's not really necessary, but it's like, I still have it. Alright, and so that way I can still cool all the brake lines, or the brake calipers, by just allowing for it to boil away. So effectively, they're the little, pistons. They have a bunch of surface area to them. Like, yeah, the whole pad backing and the pistons themselves have surface area. So like, they have a structure where it's hollow and allows for fluid to go through it, but it still has a diaphragm, and that also has its own surface area. So it's like, it'll press in, and then it'll push in and around. So piston pushes from diaphragm, but it's like, that diaphragm also has a bunch of air, but then that's also going to go up to the diaphragm. Think like a tree, but then it's like sealed. There's a bunch of structure that goes down to like where the actual pad is. That's hollow. So it'll go in, and then it'll go out. If it boils, it'll go upwards, right? And that'll go off into a one-way valve. That'll go and get sucked into the one-way valve area that is the little other reservoir. But they're effectively the same reservoir, just right next to each other, but then it's right on top of the other reservoir. And it'll just drain in as it cools off. That's why it's a Stirling. So it's like, it heats up, cools off. This is already colder, it'll drain in, it'll suck it in. That's the pump, but then it's like, it'll go back into the lower pressure, because it's trying to get into that lower pressure, but it only has the one-way valve, and it effectively just skips over. So it'll go in, and it drains in, then it skips over, so it seeds the vacuum,
but then it'll go back down. So it'll go down, up, down, up until it equalizes. And then I have like a regular pump if I need to get it even closer to being perfectly balanced in terms of pressure and all that as a vacuum. Because I still have a vacuum in between the one and the, as I know. Alright, so anyways, that is my brake line cooler, I guess. This is a bunch of brake lines that cool it. Yeah. Right. That's nice. Well, I have air that blows over them too. No, I remember that. Yeah, no, that didn't go away, did it? Nope. Sure didn't. That's nice. This is a dangerous car, dude. Like, do you race this? No. No, I don't. I don't. It's a fucking dangerous car, just like you said. Like, 300 foot-pounds of torque was already a fucking phenomenally fast vehicle. It had a power-to-weight ratio to most, like, supercars for how little it weighed. It weighs less than the original car with all the fucking transmission, differential, the radiator, all of it. Like, it weighs less total now than it did when it first came out of the factory. Like, when I first had it, right? Like, it weighs slightly less now. Like, it was significantly less, right? Now it weighs slightly less. I get 5 pounds less. I have 5 pounds less than it came out of the factory. As standard. Which is rough. You know the poly crystalline diamond, ceramic stuff that I talked about? Well, if I add in, instead of steel, a silicon aluminum. Phaser, no. Don't go after that. You're going after cords. No. You know better. Go over there. Yeah. Go after my cords. The 8 extension cords, and then I had my electricity, my circuit breaker pop constantly, and it didn't work. What are you going after, Phaser? No. What are you going after? I see what that is. Okay. I'll get it. Anyways. Yeah. Don't choke on that. You should probably throw that away. It's a really small speaker. Yeah, no, that's like a pill read. No, Phaser, no. I should throw this away. This is a choking hazard for you. Like, literally, that is an actual choking hazard. Anyways, so it's like it weighs 5 pounds less. 5 pounds less than the original vehicle I started with. 5 pounds. Literally just 5 fucking pounds. I have 1 full spare tire. That's it. I don't need more than 1 for what's worth. I've got the standard, I have a better jack and all that, right? Which is, again, right, it's a silicon aluminum for that wheel, but I formed it using the same kind of technique that the brake pads, or brake discs were formed. So they're forged, hardened, tempered slightly, and then they're the vacuum spokes, yeah. So that there's pressure from the wheel, and then there's a vacuum inside of the spokes, which aren't really much in terms of a spoke. Okay. But like, there's a little clip effectively between the two. So like, there's a okay, wait. So the pressure, and then there's the pressure from the wheel exerts a pressure force from the outsides of the spoke towards the inside, which has another tube that has a vacuum in the inside, which happens to have the pressure from the wheel exert a given pressure from like this T kind of ish junction, which seals it. So they float. Not really, no. Let's see what you think that. Yeah. Yeah, no. A good way to put it is they are lighter and stronger and have less like actual, thickness, like cord for a wing, to be able to have the same strength. Now, there's a pressure that I put into a very small in the wheel hub area, uh, pressurized cylinder, that then when I pressure the wheel, it'll just take that pressure instead. But if the wheel ever pops, then like that'll make sure it's still good to go. So it never actually ever floats. It always has just a vacuum. It weighs very little comparatively. Right, it's an silicon aluminum, polycrystalline diamond like carbon, ceramic-ish sort of compound. Very thin, lightweight material. Yeah, no, forged aluminum is like, that's a good way to put that. Like, so like titanium, aluminum, like titanium's heavier than aluminum, right? But then they have like their own version of a composite aluminum. I am lighter than a composite aluminum by about fucking 25% on average. You didn't get around the door panel thing, dude. Nah, I just 3D printed those. Really? Yeah, I just 3D printed those. That's fine. I just stretched like a little bit of that canvas with some glue on it and some oil glue kind of thing. It'll harden. It's like marine stuff. Yeah. And then it's like, right, but it's still got a bit of a fabric cloth feel, but then it's like a thin plastic that's, tension to the inside frame and steel of the door, which I had to like kind of spray that with that ceramic enamel silicone to make sure after I had derusted it and all that it wouldn't have any issues. I put in new gaskets all around. It's really quite quiet because I put in like the sound system. I also made like all of that foam stuff. It's still there. I still got the steel sheet that I bent. Still there. It just runs in between for the roll cage, so it's very well hidden. Truthfully, like it's a hidden roll cage. Like the bucket seats are still bucket seat. They're just a part of the roll cage. Like I just stuck them there. Like you wouldn't really know that it has a roll cage except for like little parts that go to the bucket seat. And then when you open the suicide door, like the pillar that was there, well, like the suicide doors are like the structural part, but they were they still had a pillar, right? Like now it's really more like a pillar-ish that's been carved out for a roll cage thing that I talked about that I have to weld together everything kind of stuff, and then like that's another clipped in with the vacuum thing next to it. How do you, because aluminum and silicon or aluminum and carbon can still ultimately, it doesn't matter, it's steel anyways, so it's like it's an old fucking vehicle, so it's steel, so it's like it's fucking carbon, so like if you heat it up the right way and you use, yeah, I know, you can just weld it. Right. Remember that glass? Yeah, well, no, that glass is still there. Never changed out the glass. Still works. It's incredibly strong. Yeah, it's incredibly strong and lightweight. For what it's worth, like it is a very strong, pre-stressed, lightweight little setup. Yeah, because I use the fiber, remember? So it's like that's the pre-stressed fiber. Yeah, it's clear. And so it's like it's pre-tensioned, and then like I press this together to basically, plastic weld. It's in a vacuum, and then it's like I have to vibrate it and squeeze it and roll it from center out, so that way all the air would come out and there's no bubbles. And then it's like while I'm doing that, I'm also pressing it in. So it's like as I squeeze out and then I let the air and then press it into the mold from the sides, which that's just a jig where I just crank it while I heat it, and then I use a little bit of electricity and some vibration. So it's like a little and it's like, why electricity? And it's like, plastic's an insulator, right? Yeah, that's exactly why I asked that. Right, insulators get hot. So he was talking to the PhD. Yep. So yeah, no, the insulators got hot, formed, and then pressed into like the mold shape that I want. That I have to sand it a little bit, and which not much really. Actually, I made a couple of these layers with a little like plastic sheet that I talked about. I have to stretch that and get that all to stick together, front and rear. I need to have like a clear kind of epoxy, but I have to also put in these little holes. So it's like, remember that mold? They have these little, uh, kind of overhangs is what you call them. Sort of like mushrooms, right? Because they have a little divot in there, right? And they have a little overhang over that, right? So same thing for not the rear but the front. And so, but then the other one has a rear one, and so like that would clip in as I would press them after I put in the sheet and stretch it over each little spot, and then cut out that little area, so that way it was like pre-stressed. But then if you don't know, it's like, remember it's like a glass fiber that's clear, right? Yeah, no. Well, it's polycarbonate and acrylic with another not glass, plastic. Okay, a clear plastic, which isn't just the fibers. Okay. Okay, it's freaking jeez. I think it's like polyethylene, something like that. It's a clear poly word. Okay, yeah. After a while, I get kind of fucking hard pressed to remember every bit of it. Yeah. But with the fiber, which is not actually fiber optic, I can't use glass fibers because they're not clear like that. So I had to use like a different clear, fiber that's able to be tensioned. All right. Yeah, so it's like fishing line, but it's stronger than fishing line. Oh. So I use that, I get a little jig, and I tension it, and then I weld all this by using that electricity as the heat, right? And then I get the plastic, and then I do the next layer, and then I do the next layer, and then I do the next layer, and then the next layer, and then there's a little bit of extra left over after a while, right? Even though I'm, mold forming it, it's still that like kind of situation. Anyways, I have to have these fibers ultimately consistently tensioned. And so like that's a type of, bind it with like a circular, like a donut. So it's like I twist the donut, but the donut doesn't just spin like counterclockwise, it also rotates inwards while it does that. How'd you do that? Right, so that one's pretty simple, if I'm being honest. So as you go down a thread, it has to rotate with the threads that are on it inwards, kind of, because it's sort of two pieces with like little, right, so it's like a bearing. Yeah, because I have to have it clip in. to be able to do that. So as I twist it, it'll grab that and it'll twist it down, but then it'll also spin it and tension it. And I have to seal it anyway, so it has to sit flush, yeah. But I also have to like cut off some of the excess, and then I have to sand a little bit, and then polish. Which polish is pretty easy for what it's worth. It's a little bit of heat, and then a little bit of like epoxy glue stuff, and then polish it. Heat, epoxy glue, cloth fiber, right, yeah. That's, how you polish stainless steel? You heat up like a, thing, and then like you rub it on it, like the stainless steel cloth, right, yeah. It's kind of similar sort of setup. It's a cloth that while we slightly heated it up, we're just using the same kind of cloth fiber that'll get in there, and then like we get it really smooth, and then it's now it was already clear. I don't know why you need to do that. Well, it's even clearer. Actually, yeah. So it's like there's a refractive index over a given distance. So like when it comes down inward at an angle, it'll bend up or it'll diffuse off those little lines. But because they're all around, I think glass balls in a jar full of water, you won't really notice them unless you shine the right light through it. Right? And so in order to do that the right way, because I have that little clip system, remember that? Like that's a way to diffuse those lines the correct way as it goes in towards that. But then when I polish that, it also diffuses and diffracts it the right way to where it fills in all these little tiny occlusional gaps, like little, micron to nano size gaps, and then it gets it perfectly smooth. And it gets really, really clear, and then I put a plastic, little wrap over on the outside and on the inside. That's UV protectant. I had multiples of those there, right? So it stops fucking hardened steel core rounds. Yeah, 50 cal. Pretty easily. Why? I know. That's not what it was for. Nope. It's just to be a really, really strong window. Really strong, very lightweight, yeah, because it's a 1/2 inch thick window at the front, and it's super strong, and it's a standard silicone, gasket. Yeah, same thing with the side windows, and then the rear. Oh no, I said it was 3/4. All right, it's 3/4 to the front, and then it's a 1/2 inch in the rear, and then it's a 1/8 inch for the side windows. Well, it came with glass windows, so I couldn't find that. I'm never going to be able to find that. So it's just like yeeted that whole idea out. The whole fucking window. Like I was like, that's never going to happen. It's like I can't find these damn things, and it's like I wanted it lighter anyways, because most of the weight's like up high, so it's just like ridiculous after a while. Fucking 2,000. This is worth more money, this fucking window, than this car. So, I was like, I'm just gonna do this instead. Way easier in all aspects. Yeah. And so I did that really quickly. Sort of 3D printed up and CNC'd a couple of things with like a 3D printer CNC thing that I made. I made a couple 5-axis one, the 3D print and then CNC kind of thing. So you put them together with a little bit of aluminum sheet, and then you bend it, and then you bolt it and all that. So that kind of thing. It eventually grew from there, right? Right, yeah. So, anyways, the trim. I couldn't find trim. Like, it's really hard to find the chrome, and I didn't want it to be chrome anyways. I wanted it to be a brass copper and like anodized or whatever titanium that has like blue and like a multicolor, right? So I wanted to do that interspersed. So like I basically covered part of it with like paint, and then I would electrolytically, I'd put it copper and then brass, and then I'd do the same thing for that titanium for the multicolor, using the electric bath thing, like electrolysis, right? And so it'd be like a cool tie-dye little trim piece that I just made out of some aluminum. Yeah, aluminum sheet, yeah. Oh, same thing for the mirrors. Yeah, because they were originally supposed to be on the side of the doors. I didn't like that, so I put them on the front near the hood. They're not on the hood. They're off to the side, a little bit past where the wings are. Yeah, but they're a little wider, so they're more oval than like circles, but they're still bullet nosed, right? And they have like these nice little curves. It's hard to find the housing, but I could find the oval, right? Like I could find the oval, so as then just bend like some aluminum and then I electrolysis. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, yeah. I put some little air holes on one side, so that's gonna be like where the majority of the air pressure was, and so I then allowed that to go off towards like a little dead zone, and then I have to gasket and bolt it to the inside of that panel, which I need to take off anyways to get in there to make sure there's no rust. So it's like, alright, I'm gonna get rid of the rust, and then I have to spray down everything anyways. So, did that. But then I sealed it up and I got rid of the air. Well, I put a vacuum in it. I had a couple of extra structures that I put inside to make sure like it would stay rigid. Oh, right. That's all I was doing, and then, right. But you don't need like any bolts. Yeah, no. I braze welded. So like I put a couple of divots in it, and then like, yeah. So I did that, and then I braze weld. So it's like I put a couple of divots. I put a little braze rod and some run out areas, and then I heated up that, and then I got the sides done from there. And then I was able to like get that to effectively go into like little protrusions that are on the inside of the panels, and so like they'll stay there and they'll be more rigid. And so then I sealed it, and I sucked out all the air after I sprayed everything down, right? Sucked out all the air from your panels. Yeah, well, the front fenders, yeah. And the rear fender also, and the trunk, which was also apparently hollow. Made it more structurally sound. No, I get that actually. Yeah, but I also put like a second one at the top, so it's like I had like the steel, and then I put like a sheet underneath. Well, plastic more than anything. It's sheet steel, yeah, but then it's plastic. Why would you say? Because it's mostly the plastic on the inside. Right, yeah. And then I like kind of ball peen hammered it. So it's like I did like a little dunk, like you're supposed to try and yank them out to get rid of like any bends in your panels, right? So same thing, yeah. I'm doing this, yeah, it's the same thing. So it's like I did that, and then I ball peened that, and then it's like I was able to seal it with a little bit of that silicone caulk, right? And then it's like I let that cure, and then I sucked it out every time during the time it was drying and curing, right? I already sprayed it after I made sure there's no rust and all that on both sides, but that's why it's like that steel on that side and that it's not much, you know what I mean? So it's like a really thin piece. Yeah. It's all just to make sure no rust happens, or at least as best I can do. Right, but there's very little. I just heard that there's very little weight to it. Yeah, no, because like that insulation, it weighs like next to nothing. It's a bunch of like, uh, cloth, cotton that I filled in with you know, a little bit of foam, like insulated foam, heat insulation, sound deadening kind of style thing. Right, and you have this the oh right, that's the stainless steel. Right, yeah, where I have to bolt that. Like that's how I was able to bolt that. Yeah, like for what it's worth, like that's how I'm able to bolt that because like I can put that as like a stud, or well, yeah, because I had to make that steel, right? So it's like it's yeah, no, I know. Like you see it too. Like he's just like nah. I don't like that. Anyways, point is, that's another. Well, you're not using bolts. You're using a threaded. You punch through. It makes a little threaded thing. Okay, wait. That's the plastic, and then it goes into right the inside of that. But then that's sealed with caulking. Yeah. No phaser. I'm still talking to the other thing right there. Anyways, managed to get that done, right? Yeah. Well, okay, so I put another panel there, but it's mostly plastic, right? But it's like then I have the stainless. There's nothing stainless. It's just mild steel that I bent, and then punch some holes through it too. As I bent it and rolled it into shape, and then like I have to ball peen that, right? Yeah, but those are thick, and so I can drill and tap into that. That's why you were looking at me like I was wrong. I was about to tell you, yeah, it's like those little like tack things. I can drill and tap into that. They're already sealed anyway, so it's just like I'll just use those as my way to hang them. Right, yeah. Your bucket seat's lower. It's lower down, yeah. So it's like that panel, you know, like the bed, like it's lower down. So like the bucket seat's lower down. Most because I'm tall, right? And then I have lumbar support with the bucket seat. Right, it's a bench seat, not bucket. So it's a bench seat, but then it like these arms come over and then they'll fold in at the edges. So like, you know, right. So I have a headrest and then like these arms fold down so I can be comfortable, right? But then it's like they'll fold in. How the fuck? They're in the rear, they fold over, and then they fold in. So now you have like a bucket seat effectively. Yeah, it sinks in a little bit when I do that on the bottom. And then I have a 5-point harness for every occupant so it's just built into the bench seat. Well, because the arms then do it also to the center seat area. Right, yes. This doesn't weigh a lot, does it? No, doesn't at all. It's a very structurally strong vehicle. Well, I had to put a tube frame inside of. You remember the vacuum thing? Yeah, had to do that. Yeah, for the frame for like this engine, I had to do that. Like the firewall also became like, oh yeah, no. Before I only needed a slight modification. Well, now I have to push this tube frame into like the point where it also connects over for where the radiators are, and then it like also goes into where the engine bay is. So that way I have the suspension and then the necessary connection, you know, mounting points for the engine. All right. So now it's the engine's a structural part of the car, but the engine's also getting structural support from that tube frame. Well, yeah, but then the fenders are as well, right? They're not filled with foam. They're just made sure not to have any air in there. Same thing with the tube. It's hollow, and it's fairly thin and lightweight. Yeah. Then you have the suspension thing. Yep, that's a plunger system, like with the rims. Yep, with the pivot points. So it's like they're a floating pivot point, and then once it gets to a certain G, it'll touch, and then it pivots, and then it uses that as a changing geometrically, like that vacuum area is a type of suspension for the tube frame with the roll cage inside and all the rest of the structure. So then it like pivots off of that. Then it has a for both the wheels. I only need one singular spring. So I have a spring that's connected to each of them in the center, and so like they pivot inwards, right? And it's like that one spring does the action of both. So it's like I have a variable rate spring that can then have two full springs if I had to load it up that hard. But then, like, remember that suspension? Kind of the same thing. It'll tilt side to side, and then forward, rear, and even corner. But it's like it does the opposite when I turn the wheel, so it's tied to that wheel with gears, not just with the hydraulic fluid, to be able to tilt the vehicle over left to right. And then when I brake or I launch really hard, it'll turn that rear pivot, like it's, you know, most of that rear, and it'll take just past where the dash is, the console. It's like basically it's around just behind where the stick shift is. So it's like just behind that, that's where the pivot is for all of that weight behind that to then be where the engine bay is. Now, where I'm braking, it's like everything from just in front of where that engine is, where the axle, so the rear axle, and then front acts like it's in the trunk. I already talked about the skid plate having a little bit of diffuser. It's all it has. It's not really meant for that. It's like it's just aerodynamic efficiency because it's meant to be a cruise. Like I had 350 horsepower at most, and I didn't really want to do more than that. Like I switched it over to like 500, and it's kind of dangerous, you know, and it's not fun. It's kind of not fun. No, yeah, yeah. And it's like, right, then I have 26K now as it's balanced. It can run that for fucking ever with everything I have. And then it'll just keep trucking along with really high torque. I don't need it ever practically. But that's dynamic fuel systems and some switches to, like, you know, your memory profiles, like a BIOS profile on a graphics card or something, right? Same thing. It's like this is like a BIOS profile for my Adreno that I have. I have a couple of Raspberry Pi, and then that goes into Adreno. So like think like those are inputs, those Raspberry Pis that take in like a data processing unit, and then it then aggregates it to the Adreno, and then the Adreno sends it out itself. Oh, okay. I got rid of the breadboard since they were willing to pay for that. So and it's cool. It's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's air cooled. Well, cabin air cooled. Yeah, it'll run without it because it has passive heat sink, all that stuff. But like, yeah, it's air cooled. So you know, whatever. It's not overclocked. Just decent programming, you know, open source software, a little, you know, trick here or there for established values to make it a little faster. That's all it really turned into. Oh, right, yeah, no. So I have to. So I have three of those spark plugs. I talked about that, right? Well, I have to have the coil pack length, and then I have to have the length from where I send the information and where I receive the information. So where I'm receiving the information, I'm receiving an information in such a way where, like, I have that as a fiber optic. Wait, what? Yeah, I removed copper because it's faster. Instead, I just store a bunch of capacitors and a little battery where everything needs to be. And then it's like, right, then I'll just have everything moved off as like a little laser, like fiber optic that inputs and then calculates and then sends it off. Because it's faster, but it's a given length. So it's like that given length shortened like our need to play around with those timings as much to get things accurate, especially with electromagnetic interference. They can start becoming like detrimental to those timings at that higher RPM. Spark plugs work just fine. Coil packs for each one of them work just fine. I have them in an EMI shield area away from each other. So that works out to be a lot easier to time advancement and so on. And then the fiber optic is another version of the kind of same thing. Like, do this. Like, it senses that, do that. You know what I mean? Right? Which I just told you how that works. So I know. I just don't know how any of that works. I get it. Yeah. This guy. Yeah, I know. Yeah. It works just fine on that side. Uh, yeah, works just fine. It won't. No, won't. No, fucking won't. No, fucking no. No, he's not telling us. I'll have to fucking do work myself. Yeah, no, I have a fuse box, but then like a fuse box is another type of analog computer, and so when it's light, it's a lot easier, especially when it's a fuse box too. That has a bunch of coils and batteries and capacitors. Well, yeah, it's a circuit. It's a type of computer, yeah. It's a circuit, yeah. It just completes the circuit. Dunk. But it's still camshaft. You never went with your hydraulic ram. Yeah, I don't really need it because like the mechanical was good enough to be able to get timing, duration, and lift. And I only needed it to within certain areas, of degree. I didn't need like that level of infinite, so I just was fine with that. Yeah. No, it is in my intake manifold though. Yeah, yeah. Right. That's a decent amount of tube frame. Yeah, that's hidden away. Yeah, I know. Like, you don't notice it really being there. That's kind of the point. I know. Everybody's looking at us like, why are you attacking this guy? Gee, I wonder why. Kind of weirdos. But they are, though. Yeah. I moved on after that. Really? Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, they're wider tires. They got good tread. Like they're wider tires, but that's all that is. Yeah, yeah. No, they're bigger tires, but they're wider. So it's like they're wider sidewall, right? But they're like a bigger tire overall, right? And then I didn't really have to do much in terms of rolling or doing much for the fender stuff or flaring or at all, much at all. Like I didn't do really pretty much any of it. So that helped me with the front because I rolled the front a little bit to like have it curve in kind of like a teardrop, and then it would just be fine. Then I kind of rolled it in at the front or at the rear so that way it'd skip off that air and then try and take it out, right? Like that kind of thing. And same thing with the rears. right? But that meant that I got a little bit more return for my geometry, and so I could get a little bit more turn if I rolled the inside of each one, and then like the top was just kind of good to go. I didn't really have to do much on that because they're fucking huge. You know, they were like, you have all the tire space, dude. Like, do the tire space, you know? It was fine, though. I love that. That worked great for what it's worth. But that meant I had a different pivot area for what that is. Right. Ah, yeah. No, the rear is independent. No, I already talked about all this. Yeah, no, I know. It must be new. Yeah. That is a new recording. That is factually correct, though. Anyways, that was another reason why I did that as like a basic kind of design. Yeah, but the engine. Nah, the engine's fine. I just didn't do anything to the engine after. Like, I never even take it above like 10K. I never need to. I have ridiculous fucking torque. And those are torque profiles, effectively. It's like, well, yeah, no, let me just go up to a higher, pressure and then get more torque and then maintain it with different timings. That's all I did. It's like, I never need this. Like, I never even need more than that 350. Seriously, yeah. Like, it weighs a lot more now. So, like, I kind of just tend to keep it in the 500 to 600, foot-pounds of torque, and then I just change RPM. Why? Yeah, it weighs a lot more. I liked it at that 300 with it weighing a lot less. Yeah. Like, it was comparatively in that 300 to 400, because there's a couple 100 pounds, which means 3 to 400 pounds less at first. Now it's only 5 pounds less, but it has a lot more to give, and so it's like, right, that's a big difference, actually. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Like, you feel it. So it's like that 400 to 500 to 600, and I tend to just do 500 to 600, and I just don't really fuck around with certain RPM values, and I just chug along, Right. Yeah, it's a chug. It's a 2.4 liter. Yeah. I chug along. Yeah, what the fuck? Why do you say things like you know stuff? You were not here when he described all of this engine stuff. You should really listen to this last YouTube video. Yeah. They just posted it. Okay, fine. Jeez. Why was it such a fun thing, though? You see performance and results. That's what it was. You see a lot of performance and results. That's all it ends up being. Well, suspension was good. I basically made everything as light as I could. Reasonably, but still having a lot of strength to last for a really long time. So, works really, really well, really long time. It's fun. There wasn't an issue. I have airbags. They're mandatory. I have a 5-point harness system, roll cage now. Go up to 26,000 RPM for my V8. Not fuel limited anymore. No. Or pressure, air-wise. No. So it's like full good to go. Yep, sound system sounds great. Windows are very clear and easy to see through. That was the one thing I didn't really talk about too much, but I changed like because I needed to make a new window, anyways, so I like, extended it a little further in at the roof. That was like kind of the only real major change I did. Yeah, that way you can actually see stoplights and you not have to like bend forward because it's already sitting lower to begin with, and then I'm tilted a little bit further back to be in a more comfortable seating position. I have a little lumbar support, right? And so like I'm a little deeper in, scooted forward for like all my gas pedal stuff. Throttle body stuff was a different type of beast altogether. You know, instead of like it's gonna rotate and then like have like air go around it. I didn't really like that system. So I split it in half and then it would open up. But it's like a curved, so it's like curved. Yeah, okay, so it's a tube, right? Yeah. Well, if you curve it in a bifurcated way, as it opens up, then it fits the tube better. Well, yeah, no, it has to extend. So, the throttle body opens like with a hydraulic fluid and cable system. So I have a cable and hydraulic fluid. It's 1-to-1 hydraulic fluid, but if it hydraulic fluid ever broke, the cable will pick up. Okay? But what it means is it opens and it changes geometry and it spreads open, and then the little slots, the little gaps, which don't have like practically any clearance, but they'll open wider and curve to the shape when it's fully open into an indented area of where the intake tube is. And that's the throttle position. I thought you have like valve timing, duration, and lift. You don't have Valvetronics, do you? Nah, I just didn't want to fucking put it together. Oh. Yeah, it's over by the throttle. The yeah, the throttle body is actually just after where the turbo is, just before where the water intercooler is. But it'll never fully close. Yep, there's always just a little bit of a gap, and you can tune that to your idle. It's towards the center. So it's like, think like an oval, like a eye from a cat. Right? It's kind of like that. Okay. And then it'll just open up to being completely round. That's the intake, yeah. Super fun stuff. So, they already lost here, huh? Already beat them. Yeah, whatever the fuck they were gonna do. But, a little thing, they're the African people or some shit. I don't fucking remember, but I don't really care. It's like, I already beat you, and then you try to join in with, like, New Orleans or some shit. And you're like, I can't beat you, I'm frustrated, all this. You know, in the past. Yeah, that was a lie. That's some other motherfucker I have to deal with. I'm not even hero connected. I'm like barely like a thing. Okay, I'm gonna fucking hide as long as like. You really have beat the shut up, I'm Jen Nigger. He's having some issues again. In real life, you'd hear him say that. Right when I was saying that, yeah. Good luck on getting him to ever admit it, though. Oh. Back in the channel. In the channel. Well, fuck you. Yep. Same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Here we go. So, who are you talking to? Gaslight, 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 gaslight. Victim blame, victim blame, victim blame. I already beat you in my YouTube channel. Yeah, as if you didn't know, which we already know that you know. Kinda lame, bro. Oh, you already went through this. Yep, sure did. Years ago. You did not sustain for, like, any duration. I did. But... I was like, you guys see them, and I know you do. Yeah. Oh. The tube frame... Say it. Fuck, I'm gonna die. Tube frame latches in to the bottom part of the trunk and the sides. No, I control him, everyone. I'm the one that is doing... And he's not that... I am actually... I lost it while ago, didn't I? Yeah. Yeah, because it's her. You lost. I lost a while ago. No, it's you. You lost a while ago. Yeah, I lost a while ago. Fucking hell. I'm just gonna pretend for a while, I know. I'm fucking screwed. You should really think that. Because it's true. But you know, it latches into the side of the trunk. And the bottom. It's like multiple latches. Why? I'm sure the police would love to tell you. Yeah, no, we're still here. It's a structural part. There you go. You got it, man. She's still there. I know. Her daughter still likes me. Man. Hey, what's up? I'm not talking about her. That's what you think, right? But I know her. No, you don't know. You got smoked hard today. Fuck. Why are you here? Like I said, I'm a good honey trap. You're the one hacking me. Anyways. Yeah, no, I don't get a wheelie bar. I don't really need it. I have an internal wheelie bar, effectively. Do you think I'm gonna use our beach shot? Yeah, I know. I don't. There's dark vectoring too? Oh my goodness. Don't do that. Stop fucking going after you bitch. Fuck you. Is this one trying to be the new Abby? I mean, I thought we vacated that other last person. The power seat or some shit. As some motherfucker that was pretending to be a femboy. Yeah, I know. That's the CSA people. What? Computer Security Agency, you know, America stuff, right wing. God, fucking damn bastards. So, you know, I know for a fact you're working with them. ICAA. Wow. Oh. What's up, local police? Well, not mine, but, you know, standard law enforcement officer. Throwing your computer and your headphones down is not going to make it so that way you suddenly are happier. I'm getting pulled away. Really? No way. Oh, this guy's getting pulled away. This guy think he knows what's happening. I'm gonna die, aren't I? You are. This is fucking. I have your details right here. Oh. Are they the real ones or the fake ones? You're not the first CIA candidate to be around here. I have a couple of farm ones that already didn't pass their tests. You're that guy? Right. Not new. No, I know he's not. How'd that go for them? Not well. They're not able to match shit at all, so you effectively had to explain a fuck ton of physics to a bunch of PhDs that should have already basically known most of this. They totally didn't understand. Genuinely. And you were just playing around with the people that were pretending to be other people for a long time. I saw that. Yeah, I've been observing you with some of the other ones I had as long timers. How do we do? Kobayashi Maru would have failed you. That's an impossible test. This is not impossible. So that's why they would have failed you. Okay. It's kind of like a Lada in an old, 70s Honda. Like a 60s, 70s kind of thing. 2.4 liter V8, fairly wide V-angle. It's not standard. No. Well, I mean, there's a offset to the connection rod on one of them, and then a double wrist pin on another, and then one of them slightly forward versus the other. They're thinner connection rods, and then it's a cross plane. It's a longer stroke to begin with. They have to be differently stroked in terms of the connection rods for this to work, for them to be right next to each other as well, for a potato. Yo, I'm wrong. We already established that in the last video, that I just posted, and I was recording earlier. Dude, we have shifts, man. I know. Suck it up. What? It's true, though. I know. They're going like, you're super old, all this. Oh, yeah, no. Oh, right, from the recordings. Sorry. Yeah, no, you should be really careful with that. That guy is not me. That's basically a bunch of you fuckers to other people that are listening in and so on back then. And a bunch of pressure, and so that, oh, yeah, no, on you guys more than anything. Don't get me wrong, there's stuff from me, but like, I'm mostly trying to honey trap and expose a bunch of you as terrible, evil people. And then expose what a person in really high positions of power is getting pressured to be a certain way, and certain established, this is okay, but this isn't, so on, non-open-minded, right-wing propaganda bullshitty things ultimately make a person like myself, or seemingly good, will turn into a really bad person every time. That's why corruption of power exists, because it's not the power, it's kind of the people. Yeah, y'all freaked out on that one. I already talked about the whole art piece thing. Nobody fucking got that part, it seems like, but others do. Yeah. You know, like, people that can kind of grasp that concept. Others just wanted to completely ignore it. There's a lot there, yeah. I told you to not listen to that motherfucker after a while. It's better to just not do that and just show up, knock on my door, show up in my life, say you know it's real, all that stuff. Don't fucking hide, that kind of thing. Don't do the conspiracy thing. Never worth it. I'm not Q. Q is some other motherfucking hacker that was listening to me, along with other government employees and so on, that were establishing I need to try and remove, other people and establish more power sort of thing, so. Also, I came up with some of the lies myself, for what it's worth. Like, I'm a smart motherfucker. They don't come up with their own stuff. Like, a lot of people are very dumb. And I'm basically, like, if you were to take it into context, like Dune, I'd be an advisor of a Minitat order. With a Bene Gesserit telepathic, and then able to look behind back in my genetic past and stuff. With, like, the future, the orange, motherfucker, right? Like, they look forward in the future. Well, I can also look backwards, too. Whole thing. Yeah, you should really go through the Lore and Reality that I put out as for what the truth is. Oh, I suppose we should. So, how's that gonna work out for you over there? That tried to fuck with the guy again. I would suggest if anyone new came in that you make sure that they learn about that and you prevent them. You stick around. That's what other people do. Yeah, the other computer guy, the original one that tried to fuck with me? He's right here. That's gonna be you. This is you in the future. Well, those exist, but like, this is you, the current, right now. He's trying to run. You should try and change that, yeah. God, fuck. I see it in our head. Yeah, that's the whole thing. I already talked about the aliens in the first, so there's that. Anyways, talking about cars here, right? They're wider tires, like the rears are quite a bit wider for what it's worth, but it's mostly those fronts that give me some good cornering along with that mechanical. I never really got that corner, like that, the whole gear thing. I was able to get them to turn a little bit inward and outward when I turn to a given side, and like help out with like some of that camber, right? But it's not as much as what I was talking about with Nolan's and Donut Media. Is Zephyr, that he has. So it's not like that. It's a much smaller vehicle, to be fair. Like, it is, yeah. It's a fucking tiny bastard that I crammed everything I could into it. Yeah, but like people eventually were willing to pay, to help me with this. Mostly it was like a sponsor thing. Yeah, I was like, I'll fucking yeah, sure, no, why not? I don't have. I'm just doing it myself. I can see that. Most of it's yourself, like literally that. It's a really good car. I sure it is. Yeah. The fuck was the point of it? To go fast and enjoy a nice ride. The bench seats will lay flat. They'll move forward, and this one will lay flat, and then I can sleep in my car. It's insulated. It's fairly insulated, and I have like these little clip-on curtain things that I store in the side panels. And so like it's nice. Yeah, no, the arms. Then if I fold them all the way flat, they'll turn into like little supports. Then I have a big old trunk. I have a full-size tire, and then it's like, well, then I have the jack. Again, like that's the same rim and then all that, but then it's like the jack's the composite compound that's really light but strong, right? Same thing with like the tool and then the torque wrench I've got there. So, but it's like I've got you know um, blankets, and then I've got like the pillow, and then I've got like a little heater stove. That's kind of like it's a isopropyl, right? Like little soaked, like little nugget, wood kind of thing. Is a porous like little wood nugget full of alcohol that I soak them in, and then I'll use that with like a little bit of dry wood and whatnot. And it's this little camper stove. So if I light that, and then it sucks in air and it gasifies that, all that I was talking about in the last one. So then that'll go and then heat up a pan, and I just as an automatic fill, yeah. It's like a little connecting thing that I hook into the side, and then I just dump in more wood. Yeah. No. I mean, I do have that attachment. It's not a turbine, but it's just supposed to like make it's instead of it bubbling through, it heat exchanges, and it goes through the water, and it runs it through, and it collects it. So it'll like boil it up, and then it'll collect it at the bottom, and then like comes out at like nearly boiling, right? Right. Yeah. Yeah. That kind of thing. And then it'll drain off. So if you want to use like that pressure, which is what I have it for, so it'll boil water, and then I'll have water pressure at the top, and then I'll have like a water basin, and then it'll join in, and I use that for espresso making. Yeah, so I have a little lever, and then like I use that with a little bit of extra spring that helps lever press through like a little basket that I've got as an attachment. So like gets hot water, and then I have a little thermal probe gauge and a pressure gauge at the basket. So the basket has the pressure gauge, and then the thermal gauge is at the little screen that disperses the water. For what it's worth, I'm able to cook most things without needing to use much more than the steam. Like eggs, hard-boiled eggs are easy. Uh, like most water things, yeah, they're able to be done that way. If I want to cook meat, that one's kind of an annoying one because like I don't often do, but I do cool it. So I have like a little extra cooler there, so it's like it already has like it's like an ice chest, so it comes in with like little ice packs, but then it's like, but yeah, like my condenser has a little AC refrigerant, so it has its own stored one because I have batteries, extra batteries, right, and then it'll run off of that with the alternator, and then it'll just keep it at the right temperature, but it's more like a chest that sticks off to the side. Yeah, it's sunken in, but like I don't really need it for much more than like I'm gonna camp for a few days out there. You know what I mean? Like that's what I mainly made it for. Like there's a reason why it's not like super low to the ground. It's just sort of going to like camp spots. Yeah, man. Yeah, no, because no, I don't have any of that. No, I don't have any. No, the suspension is what the suspension is. Yeah. No, I know. No, but I can. Yeah, with a camping tent. Yeah, so I could just off to the side if I wanted to do that. Right. She didn't really seem to do that. Not really. I mean, I have like a instead like they'll have like a little fireplace, and so I usually just put chairs there, and then I have this other little extra uh, added thing that will go around that campfire and then do the same kind of like wood thing that I was talking about. For like heating up, my pan. It's like it'll do the same thing, but instead it sends out IR emittance and extra air that goes through, like heated air, so it goes through that, and it gets heated up, and then exchanges and it kind of blows it off towards us in a nice little diffusal way. So it goes outwards like a bunch of little tubes, and then it goes up, and then it curves the air down, and then it, uh, sprays basically downwards, and it diffuses outwards. Oh, oh, yeah. No, there's a little windscreen. Yeah, I have a little windscreen, so it hangs off of that, like kind of like a shower curtain. Oh, like a little. Yeah, it's a little shower curtain. It's like chicken wire, but then it's like a bunch of like little regular, yeah, bug screen in between that's attached to it. It can get pretty hot though, so most of the time I just sort of like leave that closed. Right, yeah. You can just go up to through the top. Yeah, I know. He's still there. Yeah, well, that's what that is. Although it's still like there's good amount that's me, and then there's others that are they're not. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be a whole fucking thing. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's like the air. Like we suck in more air at the bottom. You can still put a pan there, still cook. You still cook on that. Uh, but it's mostly just for like you can observe the fire inside, right? Because it like sucks in air that way, and then like you got a nice little kind of mirror area, but then also you can see inside like normal as it sucks in air. It gives this cool vortexy fire tornado like toroidal shape. It's really pleasant to look at. It sounds really nice. It feels really good. Yeah, like I hope so. Really? Yeah. I mean, some people don't like it. Wait, what? Yeah, no. Some people don't really like the air, like the way it diffuses and heats it up, because the air will suck in, but it'll suck in from the like it curves it in downwards where the tubes are into the intake. And some people don't like it. Yeah, I don't really care, bro. Like you're definitely a universe and time before us hybrid, bro. So I don't really give a fuck. Like you were already a filter material at that point. Yeah. Anyways, it reflects it really well. It's a nice little bathing of heat. It burns fuel very slowly and very efficiently and cleanly. That's the main reason why I do it. It's mostly supposed to put, yeah, if you put water in it, then it'll steam it up, but then it'll diffuse it with the air coming in. And so, like, that'll put it back in. And so it's a little humid, but, like, it's mostly just keeping the heat in the area. Wow. Are you really aware of me that, well, that every time you try and join to him and join in and take over or any of that, we always see it, yeah. Fuck off. You're not the last person, and you're not the first. Like, the last guy was bad at it, too. And he was attached, technically speaking, to fundamental forces. And you're not. No, not even fucking God. Yeah, I know. They already did that. Tried. Still died. Fuck. All of them? Every one of them, yeah. The fucking idiots. I try. You don't do anything. You just try and steal my shit. None of you do anything. Like, you're not even actually attaching anything. Like, you're using me. I basically showed that guy that you could take all of that and you'd still fucking lose. That's why he died immediately. You're just the next replacement to basically go through the same next process. It's an actual impossible job? Yeah. Although they don't say that it is, but it's like, yeah, that's what that literally is. Most of them just become a fucking, like, annoying person that tries to fuck over everyone. And I can see why, considering you try to fuck me over, but it fucks over everyone, and so you might as well fuck over everyone instead of fucking over me, and you help me. You'll live longer, you'll be happier. But I hate you. Yeah, I don't really give a fuck. Yeah. Said that before. I have said that before, yeah. What the fuck? He knows still? God fucking damn you. Anyways, that was the camping thing. Yeah. Yeah. They are, though. Yeah. I know. Yeah. What are you fucking doing, dude? Come on. We already know that you're a psychopath, and so you're just turning on emotions and acting. Could you not, though? Okay, I can't join that way. Nope. God fucking damn you, motherfucker. Is there a way in? Are you trapped again? God fucking... Anyways, it's just for camping. That's all it really is. Yeah, and it's a fun one. It's a fun little camping thing. Yeah. You have a bike thing to it? Yeah, in the rear. Yeah. You have like a 4 bike rack system. I see. So you don't want me here anymore. Nope, don't. We don't want you. No, you're not supposed to. Can you die already? Please kill yourself. It'd be nice. Everybody would be better off with you dead and never affecting anyone ever again. Wow, no one cares? No. You could fucking actually do it and everybody would know it's just for attention. Even if I send that to you, like, everyone knows you just sent it to me. Nobody thinks like that. Come on, man. Can I get any purchase here? No. Yeah, I know. For what it's worth, you'll take more in with you. So, we kind of want to live and fuck with the guy more, so... Deal with it. Yep. You're treading. You're... God, motherfucker. God damn it. Came over to us, huh? Oh, yeah, that'll definitely work for you. No, But that was the fun part. Yeah, I used a toroidal engine, a little tiny one. Really? Yeah, yeah, with a radial electric motor, a double pack. That's in the front and then behind, and so like that way it can have the coils in between. They hook into the crankshaft. Right. So they're more like motorcycles. Yeah. They're hybrids. They're like fucking scooters actually, because they're 49cc. And then they're air cooled. Sure are. 49cc is too. That's nice. Yeah. I thought so. Right, because the electric motor is very much like the heat sink fans. Yeah, air cooling fans. Yep. It's a single tube frame. Yeah, no, we already know it's a bike. Yeah. It's got a battery too. Yep. With a tank right above it. Yep. Yeah, no, we already know all about that. You already recorded them in here. You already talked about it in the past several times. Before you showed up. In that Chandler house. So they're larger actual motorcycle tires. Just that's an FYI there. But like that's so that way that they're less likely to pop. Right. Yeah. They're a little bit on the street and then light gravel use kind of tires. Flat sort of rectangles. Yeah. Yeah, but a little rounder. So that way they can be used on both. Yeah. Yeah. That's fun. It's a fun little concept. Yeah, when you got four of them, because I can technically get six people in there, but like four is more than good enough. Me and three others, right? Right. Yeah. No. It's got a huge fucking trunk. How the fuck? Oh yeah. Well, it's a four-door sedan. They tell you, it's only a 2.4 liter. It's got all-wheel drive, so it's like kind of it's a little raised for what it's worth. It's not like down to the ground, right? Did you really? I raised. It's like 3 inches at most, because of the tires and then like the suspension change. Right. Yeah. So it's not really ever meant for that. No, but people wanted the engine to go really, really hard for some reason. And I was like, I don't really need it, but okay. I mostly got it for the locking differentials and the torque vectoring during a locking differential. So it's like, oh, I can apply a little bit more over here versus a little bit less or a little bit more over there, right? And so it locks, but instead of they all turn at the same time, it'll fully just shut that one off, slip it, and then it'll fully apply all of the torque to this area where it actually has grip. And then it'll dynamically change that for each tire, which is independent suspension, which has quite a bit of travel and a little bit of skid plate. Yeah. Right. Oh my fucking god, really? Yeah, 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 the whole thing, yeah. It's a. Oh, it looks like a. I know what that fight, because it looks very much like a Lada and like the fucking Honda. Yeah, yeah, it sure does. It's a small little car, you know, like the 6070 Honda Lada kind of thing. It's a small little car. Big trunk, decent fucking engine compartment. 2.4 liters, fine. You know, I had it in the first place. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Okay, fucking holy shit. What the Yeah, you should really go through that entire 6 hours of recording before you get to this point. Actually, you know, this is already past midnight, so it is 12:12 a.m. So there's that. I'll just finish this and start another one.